That's a great place to start. It's the shame we feel at having painful knees. So, yeah, would everybody like to put in the chat whether they've got painful knees or what their interest in being here today is? I'd love to hear, um, why you've come today. So, especially at the
Oh,
gym,
oh,
is that?
oh, yeah, it's going too quick.
Yes. Yes, yes, your knees are much better now, aren't they, Jill? That's great. But do they still give a bit of jip?
Only if I don't do the wrong things.
Well, isn't that
I don't do
marvellous?
the wrong things. And
Yeah,
I've retrained my habits about where I'm directing my knees.
yes, brilliant.
Interestingly, a client said to me yesterday or the day before that an osteopath had said to her about the dangers of pulling the knees together, which I concluded 20 years ago
Mm,
is a particularly female pattern.
we'll
And it's
talk
not
about
good
that
for the
one.
knees, and it's not good for your hips, and it's not good for the contact of your feet on the floor. I just thought it was very interesting that an osteopath has reached the same conclusion,
Excellent.
because that's what I
Yes,
used to do. That's part of my old pattern. I don't do it anymore. I don't wear skirts or dresses anymore. I don't own a skirt or a dress. So I don't
yes,
pull my knees together anymore, and I've stopped caring what anybody might think about it. And my knees are pain free.
brilliant. Yeah, yeah, yes. That's the story. Thank you. Um, yes, interested in this genius system that is our body. Absolutely. Gluteal tendinopathy. Been there, yeah. Okay, well, actually, mine was hamstring tendinopathy. Yeah, thank you. Thank you all for sharing this old football injury. Yeah, trouble with hip affects knees, yes. Good, thank you for sharing. And Leslie or Alvina, if you'd like to put in the chat why you're here, whether you have knee pain or issues. Always good to hear. Baker's cyst in both knees. Yes. Yes, I mean, pain is part of the human condition, sadly, isn't it? Um, and does it have to be? And can we at least reduce it? Okay, as you can hear, I have had a bad cold. I'm feeling much better. I still have a very croaky voice. If I dissolve into coughing fits at some point, please forgive me. And if my voice sinks so low you can't hear me, just wave at me. Marise, if I start speaking too fast in English, just wave at me. So, don't be afraid to state your needs. So, let's dive in. I have a generous 22 pages of notes here. Let's see how much we find in them. So, yeah, we're here to talk about knees. We're here to learn more about their functional anatomy, and from that make new discoveries that of how to use Alexander approaches. So it's a rather different approach to Alexander's own approach, but I think it can be a useful one. So in Alexander work, we usually work by releasing tight muscles, of course, by releasing overworking muscles so that the natural body balance can come quietly back into play. And one of the biggest overworking muscle groups is the quads. I don't know whether you'd all agree with that. The quads tend to overwork furiously. And the quads are the muscles at the front of the thighs, for those who still aren't quite sure. And certainly when I came to Alexander, my quads would probably have been overworking like mad, effortfully powering all my movements, walking, cycling, running, squatting, dancing. And we tell ourselves and our pupils, relax the front of the leg, don't bunch at the knee, send your knees away, and so on. And so after 3 years of lessons and then 3 years of training, and working on myself in this way, I went to Miss Goldie, who saw that I was often now over-releasing. And I know everyone here has heard this story before. And was not sufficiently using enough tone, particularly in the shoulders and the torso. And she got me to switch areas on to keep them alive, to keep them flowing. But of course, she didn't specify it anatomically. And I now know from my historical research that Alexander worked to keep people switched on, to get people to switch on and tone up, far more than we realise, I think. And of course, he wrote about the dangers of relaxing too much. So, but this isn't a historical workshop, this one. In the last few decades, there have, of course, been huge advances in understanding in the moving body, particularly in the realm of fascia and so on, and proprioception. And to research this workshop, I've just Googled a lot and talked to physios and looked at anatomy and physiology and anatomy and fitness work and all my usual functional fitness sort of avenues. And they all have their own understanding of knees, and they all have their models of healing and movement that usually are not holistic. And usually I'm thinking, wouldn't do it that way. But one can learn from them. What are they trying to do? Why are they trying to do it? And what is there in there for us? And in particular, they discuss the underworking muscles as well as the overworking muscles, how to get things working again. Of course, they're very fixated on local strengthening, again, in an imbalanced way. But what are they trying to do? Why are they trying to do it? So I found it began to add up to a coherent story that I could then Alexanderize and which could then help my knees. Because my interest in knees is because they were hurting. And I think my own knee issues stem right back from day one, from my birth, because I was breech birth. I came out bum first. I think it put my hips out right from day one. And I then didn't crawl. I sat sideways with my feet both out to my left. And I think I put further imbalances on my hips. I must have put huge torques across my knees. Too much weight in the right hip, too much weight in the left, too much torque in the left knee, and so on. All of which I'm really feeling, now I'm 65. And also my legs weren't straight. They seemed to be knock-kneed and yet also bow-legged at the same time. My knees hyperextended, which was they pushed back too far, which was further emphasized by ballet lessons, which encouraged me to lock my knees up and pull up at the quads while turning my feet out hugely. So, and I felt that my first Alexander lessons when I was 23 were actually just in time to save my knees, which were already going into pain. Otherwise, my God, I'd probably have 2 replacements by now. I discovered I could dance and move better and balance better with loose knees, which was a revelation. I could even go on point with loose knees, which is not supposed to be possible. And a gentle chiropractor then rebalanced my hips and got my legs level, which made a huge difference. And then when I began to work with Jando Masuero in 2016, using the initial Alexander technique, he helped me rebalance all my leg spirals and took me out of secondary curve into a neutral stance. And that's largely connected the knock knees and bow legs, which turned out to be from muscle imbalance. And we'll talk more about that. Some people, I think, knock knees and bow legs is in the bones, in which case, there's probably not much you can do about it. But I think a lot of them is actually muscle. But last year, my knees began to hurt again. The stresses of the last few years, the arrival of 2 grandchildren and moving country, along with too much sitting in front of computers and writing has all put my hips out again, and I didn't get onto it quick enough. One hip was actually 2 centimetres higher than the other, and it then started to impact my knees. So I've spent a year really trying to save the day. So I finally found the right chiropractor again to put the hips back, but it's too late. It was too late for my knees, and they began to look like they were going into osteoarthritis. So there were patterns I needed to identify, and fast. Anyone relating to this rather sorry tale of events? I've been working all year, but particularly the last few months to discover what's happening, and the reasons, and find solutions. And apparently my tibias were externally rotated, my patellas were laterally displaced. I'll tell you more about that. And as of today, my hips are now level again. My left tibia has now rebalanced, and the patella now tracks right. The right one hasn't quite got there yet, or hadn't a month ago. I'm back to the chiropractor next week, so I'll see what he says now. But almost all the pain is now gone, and which is just so wonderful. Just if I bend right down into a full squat and I put pressure on the right knee, I can still feel it behind the back of the right knee. But I think that's just, it will go. And the right hip, which was struggling, that's now got better as well. So it's been a huge journey, and I hope it inspires you that whatever's going on for you, you can. and Jill's story, which she told in the chat earlier, I mean, you had such pain from your knees for so many years, and they're now better. So, knees really can recover. I've certainly seen clients say avoid a knee operation. I'm trying to save another one at the moment. She's due for the chop on both knees, and I'm thinking how much can I get these knees better? And hoping that even if she does have to have an operation, she will actually rehabilitate faster. So, So this workshop is exploring the whole journey, but in particular the latest discoveries, which just acted a bit like a magic bullet at the end. So we'll see what happens. So knees take a lot of strain, and their alignment is critical. The whole weight of the body is taken through the knees when standing, walking, bending or squatting. When we run, apparently, the knee takes 6 times the body weight. It's, massive. Or if we jump, there's huge forces going through knees. And, of course, our body's tissues are always remodelling continually in response to the forces on them. And if the forces are aligned correctly, then the tissues of the knee joint will be strengthened with use, and no problems will occur. If the forces are incorrect, misaligned in some way, and then the various tissues, the muscles, the tendons, ligaments, bone, cartilage, and so on, will be weakened over time. So it's usually said that arthritis of the knee is ascribed to wear and tear with age, but good use should be able to prevent or reduce this. So here's my first slide of a nice quote I found on a physio website from Ireland, and it was entitled "Why Exercise Should Be Your First Line of Treatment," and saying that most people with knee problems actually just get sent straight to the surgeon without any form of looking at how they're using themselves, how they're moving, whether they're moving, exercise and so on. And she says the cartilage that covers the ends of our bones is a tough protective layer with no blood supply of its own. It relies on movement. Like a sponge, cartilage is compressed when we walk or load a joint, squeezing fluid out and then drawing fresh nutrients back in. Each step allows nutrients and natural lubricants to circulate and maintain joint health. And that is why the old idea of osteoarthritis as simple wear and tear is misleading. Joints are not car tires that inevitably grind down. Osteoarthritis is better understood as a long process of wear and repair. in which regular movement and exercise are critical to healing and to the health of the entire joint. So, our standard approach in Alexander work, of lengthening and widening, up and off the knees, actually still always needs to be our primary approach, because that's when we lengthen and widen and generally think up, we're, I think, giving the joint space for this natural squeeze release mechanism to happen. You can feel you're putting space back in the joint, can't you? And so our first response to knee pain always, I think, needs to be noticing where we're pulling down, tension patterns that are compressing and tensing the joints, and then you send the head forward and up, back, lengthen and widen, let the knees go forward and away, and the result is to take the pressure back and up off the knees and distribute it back through the system. And of course, we've all gone into detail in the Book Study Club or whatever course you've done with me, and it's standard Alexander approach. And most of the time it works. And here is a picture of my poor old mum, who's now 90. And amazingly, her knees don't hurt, but she's got herself into a very sorry state, unfortunately. And just look at the strain her quads must be under in order to hold her up in this position. And a few years ago, she had several falls, and there was no apparent reason. And also a physio I sent her to, because I was always too far away to be of much practical use, concluded it was because she was holding her knees bent and at this wacky angle. And the physio kept saying, straighten up and lock your knees. No. And coming up from her head actually did nothing. If I'm with her and I say, come up from your head, it just doesn't touch it. But coming up to the back, from the back of the armpits, ribs at the back of the armpits, up and away, that really helped. And so does thinking the sternum forward and up. And that's where we then get to, which is a lot more comfortable for her. And I think is much safer, quite simply safer. I mean, she has no idea she's standing at this angle until I take a photograph and say, look, Mum. And she goes, oh, wow. So that's working with the lifter muscles, and you can see that that's just taking a lot of strain off her knees. So this is always a good starting point. But as we are seeing from people here today, even teachers who've been thinking these absolutely beautifully for years and years and years can still have knee problems. So there's more going on. And what is it? Let's widen the net of the exploration. So the alignment of the legs is crucial to the health of the knees. Let's look at the shape of the femur bone. And it's, here's the shaft of the femur, which you'd think would be vertical, but this is the angle of the neck. And then you've got the ball of the socket there. And that means that if the ball of the socket is to be above the knees, and this illustration actually shows it as the heels pretty well under the hips, then you can see that the femur bone actually has to be at an angle. And that's called the Q angle. And it's greater in women than men. You've got a male pelvis on the left, which doesn't have to give birth, and a female pelvis, which does have to give birth, on the right. And that angle has gone from 13 degrees to 18 degrees. And you can see why knee problems are more problematic in women, and why women's knees are more likely to fall together. And then, of course, as Jill was implicitly saying, the social pressure for a woman who's wearing a skirt to put her knees together is then further increasing that Q angle, I think. And we'll have a play with that in a bit. So if the forces are imbalanced, it will create huge strain in the knees. And so let's actually just all stand up and have our first play. So lots of people actually, without realising it, end up standing with the knees slightly bent. So just play with standing with your knees slightly bent, and which a lot of Tai Chi people end up doing. I think, you know, I quite often come across Tai Chi people who stand with their knees permanently bent, and just feel the strain that you have at the front of the quad, and this can create problems in the front of the knee. It can start going into long-term strain. Now, if you then pull your knees back, you can then obviously you can brace the knee up. So just be aware of what happens if you pull those pull to the quads. Then you get that great bunching around the knees. My knees used to do this where they're hyperextended, and you can see that when that happens, you can see the lower leg is actually going behind the ankle. That's part of a hyperextended knee, and it's actually forced back too far. So just try that one, see what that feels like. And again, we're used to picking this up in the back, because if I do that, I pick it up in the back. But pick it up in the knees themselves. You know, again, my knees just feel scrunched when I do that nowadays. And yes, I lived like that for years. Now then there's knees turned in is, you know, people who stand with pigeon toes. Again, just feel the torque that you get on the knee with that, if you can pick that up. And how about this one? If you're standing with duck feet, again, just see if you can pick it up in the knee. I'm aware of too much going on in the outer knee with that, and not much happening on the inner knee. So there's an imbalance there. That one, again, I've probably got more going on this side than that side, I'm not sure. And then, so that's pigeon toes and duck feet. And then there's knock knee, which is that one, which is, you know, obvious strain on a knee. You can see that Q angle increased. And then bow legs is that one. And a lot of people with bow legs, they're standing with on the outside of their feet. Knock knees, they're very often the flat foot on the inside. That's quite often a pattern with very overweight people, isn't it? That one, for some reason. Again, just be aware of if you put your feet too close together. I can feel the tension on the back, but what about the knees? Too far apart. I sort of feel it impacts on this side. And what about standing on one leg? If I do that, again, I'm used to feeling that in the hip. What does it do in the knee? I'm aware of it putting too much pressure on the outside. This one again is wanting to kink in that way. Try that one. That one. There's different things people do to stand. And again, what are they doing to knees? Anyone want to comment on all that? It's all pretty self-explanatory really, but anyone notice anything and go, oh my God, I do that? Manuelo. Go on.
Could you please repeat? I didn't get it quite when what you said about obese people locking their knees, because this is what I notice in some of my students. They're really strong and the legs are quite big, but even they are already big, they are pressing them together.
Yes.
I don't really know why. Why is that so common, and why do all obese people seem to do that?
Well, I did Google that at one point because I was thinking to myself, it looks like a trauma pattern, and it is apparently, and they say that a lot of obesity, that the weight goes on following a trauma, and the hypothesis that I've read is that the trauma obviously puts the cortisol levels up. The system is stressed. The pelvic floor collapses. It goes tight and goes offline, and that then imbalances the lower body, and so you get this sort of falling in of the pelvic arch, which is the way I think about it. That You know, instead of this part of the body being able to, you know, keep its integrity, it sort of collapses, and then that happens. But then, because of the hormone imbalances, people comfort eat, or it causes the body to take on weight, and, you know, in case, because it feels in danger, so it goes into starvation patterns, and that's so the weight going on is actually secondary. The trauma and the collapse of the legs, the collapse of the pelvic region, is actually the primary cause, and that's why there's the number of physios I read about that said they then work with, if they get somebody obese, they work with them on wobble boards and you know, to try and wake up that whole pelvic region. And one could, you know, do the work that we do with the psoas, with the breathing into the lower body and getting the pelvic area and the hips regions, you know, woken up again, needs to be primary to trying to diet. Because as long as that trauma pattern is still in play, the body, and if that's the reason the body's holding the weight, it's never going to lose the weight. You've actually got to sort the trauma first. They also say there's no point trying to sort pain, trying to get somebody to lose weight if they're in pain, because again the body will hold on to the weight as a coping mechanism, as a fear reaction against the stimulus of pain. So which are all interesting ideas, aren't they? A bit off topic today, but no, thanks for asking that. I think it's important. So let's start in on the anatomy of the knee joint, and so we'll start off with a quick image of the knee. Is actually two joints in one. Here's the patellofemoral, the tibiofemoral joint, because here's the femur bone of the thigh bone, and the tibia, the bone of the lower leg. The little fibula bone is actually not involved in the knee. You can see it's underneath there. So the tibia and the femur meet together at the tibiofemoral joint, and that's actually the biggest synovial joint in the body. And then you've got the patellofemoral joint, which is where the patella, the little kneecap, articulates on the cartilage of the femur. So let's actually, I bought a knee model for, it's a piece of plastic that doesn't really do justice to living anatomy, but it will do. So the femur, of course, ends in two condyles. It's interesting to think about the fact that there's the cross-section of the femur bone. It's actually triangular, and the tibia is actually the same. That's also triangular. And then they broaden out to make this huge square structure. Both bones extend out to make this huge square structure, which really gives a very solid plateau on which the femoral condyles rest on the tibial plateau. And the femur comes down in these two huge condyles. I trust the light is enough. That's the back of the femur. They're not quite as, you can just about see it at the front. You've got these two condyles. And they don't sit directly onto it, of course. They sit onto the menisci, which are the blue things here, which are these, you can see there, two C-shaped discs, and they're like that either side, and they form a dish. They help spread the weight across the plateau, because otherwise the point of the femur would be just grinding down on one bit. So they help spread the load across the whole plateau, and they also make a nice dish for the condyles to roll and glide in smoothly, and that helps with stability. So although the knee is called a hinge joint, it doesn't work like a door hinge, which is just one point that articulates. a static point of rotation. Instead, the pivot point is in the middle of the femoral condyles, and it actually glides through it. Again, it doesn't demonstrate it very well, this model, but it glides through the dish, which means during flexion and extension, actually it's the tibia that slides backwards and forwards on the femur, say when we're walking, like that. And this is, of course, potentially highly unstable because the knee has no bony articulation. Like, if you think about the hip with its great ball and the great socket around it, that's a very secure bony thing that the ligaments and the muscles then support. And even the ankle has got two sort of whatever they're called either side to protect the joint and stabilise the joint. The knee has nothing. There is no bony configuration here. It's entirely held together by its ligaments and by muscles. So if the ligaments and the muscles are out of balance, the knee is in trouble. Again, it makes it a very fragile joint, really, and potentially highly unstable. So the ligaments are the primary source of stability, and you've got the two cruciate ligaments. Now, I always knew nothing about the knee, and I thought they went that way. They don't. They go backwards and forwards, and they run in that great groove between the two condyles. And one comes from the sort of the back to the front, and the other comes from the front to the back. So they cross over like that, something like that. And what they do is the anterior one helps prevent during flexion. The anterior one tightens apparently and helps the tibia glide backwards, and then the posterior one helps the tibia glide forwards, and they stop them gliding too far. So it can glide too far, and it can glide so far, and it can't glide too far. So they're guiding the gliding movement and stopping it going too far. Likewise, this is the outside of the knee. This is the inside of the knee. This is the outside of the knee. We're looking at a right kneecap here. So this is the lateral collateral ligament, and this is the medial collateral ligament, and they stop it moving side to side. So all those ligaments need to be nice and taut. And if they are torn or damaged or ruptured, it's very serious. And, nowadays, of course, you get a nice operation. And they need it. If you tear a ligament, you probably need an operation to put it back together again. So, you then got articular cartilage. Excuse me. And here's the cartilage, this blue line, and it's 1/4 inch thick. That is some thickness, if you think about it. One of the bummers of aging is there is an enzyme that, one of those GER enzymes they're called, that simply develops with age, that breaks down collagen, and also a loss of estrogen breaks down collagen. So it's not a loss of collagen in the cartilage isn't entirely just down to wear and tear and us doing it wrong. It can just be down to physiology, and that's just bollocks. But keep taking your vitamins and your minerals. I don't personally take collagen supplements because they're not vegan. There are now vegan supplements, collagen supplements. I haven't yet tried them. Glucosamine, MSM, silica, there's vitamin C. There's a lot of different products out there that again help help to support collagen production. So, we're not talking about that today, but just to say there is that side of it. Keeping drinking plenty of water, because again, it all needs plenty of hydration and so on. Keeping tea, coffee, dehydrating things to a minimum and so on. So just to throw that out there. Now, we've got the patellofemoral joint. That's this one here. And the patella runs in the shallow groove on the front of the femur, and that's what it looks like side on, or from above rather. So that's the groove at the front of the femur. You've got that huge groove at the back where you really see two condyles. The front is more just a groove, and the patella, which is round on the surface, it's actually got this nice little curvy V shape, and it needs to stay within that groove. And as we'll see, it can get pulled one way or another, and that's when you start getting wear and tear, and it hurts. And again, a lot of knee problems are apparently because of just that. The patella is held in place by the four quad muscles. Here it is. You can see that it's embedded in the patella tendon, in the quadriceps tendon. So here's the quadriceps coming down. You get the quadriceps tendon, then the patella is embedded in that, and the tendon below the knee, which is really just a continuation of the whole thing, is called the patella tendon, and it finishes on the tibial tuberosity, which is that little lumpy bit just below your knee. And there you can see how the patella really is in the tendon of the quadriceps muscle. And then you've got the other three quadriceps muscles, the vastus lateralis, the vastus medialis, and underneath the vastus intermediate, all of which, again, insert onto the patella. So the patella is held in place by the quadriceps muscle. It's intimately associated with them. And its role is to protect the tibiofemoral joint, primarily. If you fall on your knees, you hit your patella and not the joint, so it's protective. But the other thing it's doing is it's acting as a fulcrum, so that instead of just this being the pivot, there's a fulcrum on it which just increases the leverage, the power of the quadriceps muscles, and allows them to exert more power throughout their length, increasing their potential strength. So, any questions of all that lot? Everybody okay so far? Christine?
Can you just repeat that last bit of what you just said about the patella being held, and as with the fulcrum I didn't get?
Yes, a fulcrum, I'm not a physics expert. Oh, hello Alison, good to see you've made it, and Nicola. Yes, the fulcrum, it increases the power of a lever, I think. That you've got the, instead of just a point rotation, then you've got another fulcrum. If that's the fulcrum, I think it just, I'm not sure how it works physics-wise, but somehow it increases the power. And so the fact that the joint isn't just doing that, but it's doing the power is carried round here. I don't understand the physics of it, but apparently it works to increase the power of the quadriceps muscle. I can sort of have an intuitive feel. Can anyone explain it better than me? Because that wasn't really an explanation. It was just no. Okay, that's fine. Alvina?
Maybe you call it like a gut roll. So
What?
it's
Sorry.
a gut roll. So it's I don't know whether it's the English word, but you can load much more effort on it because you can transport the weight through it. So gut roll is Dutch, but I'm not sure what's the English word. Yeah.
I don't know what the word would be there.
I will have a look.
Yes. Yes, but I think it is something like that. It just allows it to put more more power and pressure through it. Does that make sense, Christine, even just to say it in that language that someone
Yeah,
would say?
I get it now more. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah,
Sure.
yeah, thank you. So let's look at the muscles that are involved. And hi, Brenda. Interesting to see you here. Come to join in. Good. You're welcome.
Hi.
Hi. You just come to share?
Yeah, just joining to see what's going on, but I'll leave shortly. Don't mind me.
Yeah, you're very welcome to stay if you'd like, of course.
Okay.
So, yes, here's the three groups of muscles of the thigh, because the muscles of the thighs are in three compartments: the anterior compartment, the posterior compartment, and the medial compartment. And the compartments are divided by these intermuscular septum. They're basically a stiff band of fascia, and each compartment has its own blood supply, its own nerve supply. So the anterior compartment with the quads, it's the femoral artery and the femoral nerve, I presume. The back one has the sciatic nerve. I don't know what the artery is. I'm not really up on that, but it's interesting that it's not just the muscles, but also the nerves and the arteries, which and the blood vessels apparently are in these different groups. So you can see just how huge the quads are. Certainly at this section of the thigh, you can take a different section and you'd see more hamstring. But so you've got the rectus femoris, which is the big up-down muscle at the front, and then the three vastus muscles are huge. Vastus medialis on the inside, vastus intermedius, vastus lateralis on the outside. They're huge muscles. At the back, we've got the three hamstring muscles, and on the inside, we've got the adductor muscles. And their actions are that the quadriceps, and again, we'll go through this in detail, but it's just putting the idea out there. All four quad muscles extend the knees, that is, they straighten the lower leg. Only rectus femoris, that's the one that's that top quad muscle, the flex, only that one flexes the hip, as we'll see. The hamstrings all flex the knees and extend the hips. I don't think there are any other muscles in the body that have this dual function in this way. And it complicates them, and it's why I didn't look at this for years, because it just, every time I looked at it, my brain just went, and I ran away. And I'm now finally looking at it, and it's fascinating. The adductors adduct, as in they pull the legs together and they stabilise, and that's as much as we're going to say about the adductors today. The quadriceps and the hamstrings are also acting eccentrically to stabilise the action of the hips and knees. So as you flex the hips, say in bending forwards in a squat, the hamstrings are eccentrically decelerating the movement. In other words, they're slowing down your squat. And as you flex the knees, the quads are eccentrically decelerating the movement, slowing it down. And we'll play with that in a minute, so you'll see what that's about. So here's the quadriceps. So rectus femoris is this one that runs up the very front. So it comes from, it originates from the lower iliac spine, not the superior one that we talked about so much before, but the inferior one. There it is. And so it crosses the hip, and then it crosses the knee, and it finishes down on this little lump below the knee called the tibial tuberosity. So it's run over the patella down below the knee. So it's a multi-joint muscle. It crosses both the hip and the knee. And so you can see from this side on, you can see how if it contracts, it's going to flex the hip. So it's a hip flexor. But the other vastus muscles, the vastus medialis on the inside, vastus lateralis on the outside, and underneath you've got vastus intermedius that you can't see. They only run up the length of the thigh bone. They don't cross over the hip. So they act to extend the knee, but they don't act on the hip. So look at how they insert. This is making an insertion all the way down the whole length of the thigh bone. This is the vastus medialis, so we're looking at the inside of the thigh here. The vastus lateralis is doing the same on the outside of the thigh, and the vastus intermedius is inserting all the way down the front of the thigh. So they really have the thigh really gripped. And if you think of the power of those three muscles working together, along with this top muscle, there's one hell of a lot of power there to extend the knee. And we'll see why. I've got an image. Oh yes, this one has got the rectus femoris taken off. There's the rectus femoris taken off, and you can see the vastus intermedius in the middle. And you can start to see how their three tendons really, again, all join in with, there's the kneecap. They really are enclosing the kneecap in an enormous wodge of really tight tendon material, strong tendon material. And then you can see them also going into the thigh at the other end. So the four quad muscles, their primary importance is to extend the knee. They work together to straighten the knee joint. So if you go from the tibial tuberosity, just feel below your kneecap, you'll find this lump below your kneecap. Whenever there's a lump, it's an attachment site. And actually, I've realised if I slightly bring my knee forward, I can feel the patellar tendon. Now it depends on whether you're as bony as me, whether you'll be able to feel yours, but you can feel the tendon that then comes up around the kneecap. And can I then feel the next tendon? Yes, I can, of where it attaches to the quad muscle, and then of course the huge quad muscle coming up. And if you again flex your hip, if you feel there's the anterior, the top iliac spine, but if you feel down below and flex the hip, you can sometimes feel the tendon, I think, at this point as well of the, if I actually, oh that's right, if I lift my leg, yeah, that's where I feel the tendon, at the top of the rectus femoris. Yes. Oh, thank you, Dimitri. A pulley to transfer the weight. Thank you for that, Alvina. The word she was after was a pulley. Yeah, that makes sense. Yes. Right, I'll speak up when I'm away from the computer, Dimitri. So I think I've missed the importance of the quads up till now. I'm sort of feeling a bit, why did I miss the quads importance up till now? And I think it's because in functional anatomy, because I've learnt my anatomy from Thomas Mars's work, and he's looking at muscle chains that are myofascial chains that are physically linked with the fascia. And when he talks about the extensor chain systems, he talks about the back of the body, and as that is the extensor chain system. But the quad is an extensor, but it's not in that fascial chain. So he doesn't talk about the quads as extensors and the hamstrings as flexors. We think of this as the flex side of the body, and this is the extend side of the body. But one physio I found, he says the extensor mechanism of the quad is the motor that drives the knee joint and allows us to walk. I mean, so if we don't consider the quad, we're missing one of the biggest motors in the system. And then, as you flex the knees, so there it is extending the knee, and then as you flex the knee, it's slowing the movement down. That quad is now working like fury to support. It's lengthening. Here it's contracting, here it's lengthening, and it's working to support, to slow the bend and support the bend. So let's, and of course they're working in activities standing up from a seated position, going up and down stairs, squatting, cycling, and so on, jumping. So let's all stand up and have a play. So what I
Can I
want
just
to
say
do-
something briefly?
Yes, please.
I just to base what you said. I heard that the definition of what is definition of dorsal and ventral surface of the body is that I used to think that dorsal is in the back, ventral is in the front, but apparently it's crossed below the hips. It's the front is the dorsal and back is ventral.
Now that's further complicating it.
Okay.
No, I
No,
think
but it's consistent with what you were saying. It's just the extent.
it is. I think though, I think I haven't checked this out, but I remember learning in college that when a frog jumps, the the calf and the quad and the glutes fire together to extend together. So I wonder if kinetic chains. I just sort of assumed that the kinetic chain and the myofascial chain were actually working on the same muscles, but they may not be. And that may be a kinetic chain that the extensors, that one fire together. Or that one there, because the hamstrings are extending the hips, the quads are extending the knees. And it may be that there's neurological chains that fire together. I suspect it's more like that, rather than thinking about front and back of body is probably not the chain itself. And I need to check that one out. So let's explore this. So if you go into semiflexion and just find your tibial tuberosities and then stroke up, and being aware that that's how the quad is pulling in order to pull you to upright. And then think exactly the same thought again. Now your quad is eccentrically lengthening to fold you back again. Think of it extending, concentric contraction, and bending. It's supporting you. So, what's that like? What's it like to think that direction as you bend and straighten? Anyone like to comment? Everyone going, yeah, this is the same. Alison?
So it's interesting that it seems to be more controlled when I'm just thinking about one side, but when I add the front, it seems to add some more stability, control. I mean, I don't like control because it sounds grabbing, but it's more stable.
Controlling in the good sense of the word rather
Yes.
than the
Yes.
tyrant sense of the word. Yes, thank you. Yeah, it brings us stability, doesn't it? Anyone else noticing anything with this? Suzanne, and then Christine and Tineke.
I feel it most actually in the hips. It's like loosening the upper body of the legs.
Nice, thank you. Christine?
I feel that there is more elasticity in the movement, and it's more clear where it goes, and also it helps. That even in bending, it's up. It comes up, and from the knee it comes up.
Yes.
So I mean, I'm also here up, but now it comes from the knee up.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. And that just makes a difference, doesn't it? Tineke? Tineke? Can you get your...
I'm sorry, I have to get accustomed again.
Yes.
I'm not sure that I understand what you do. You want to say that we should think from the knees at the front side up when we
Yes.
go down, and also from the knees to the hips up when we go up?
That's right. It's the
Okay.
same direction. And
So
you think it might be the other direction, but it isn't, is it? It's
Yeah.
you need, because the muscle is actually working in that direction to pull, to support up.
that
When
was my
it's-
question.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes,
okay.
thank you. Yeah, and so it's supporting. One person I worked with this, she said, it feels like every time she takes a step, it feels like she's got an ace bandage just supporting her knees, which is nice. Anyone else want to comment on this? This was the first point where my knees really started to turn round, and I just made this very straightforward discovery. So Christine.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, I usually help people when they're walking from behind to stroke from the butt down to the knee.
Yes.
But it never occurred to me to stroke up at this. It's the balance now, right?
Yes. 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 Well, the downstroke, both have their play, and we'll explore the downstroke on the thigh in a minute as well. But this upstroke is nice. And again, you see, we're so used to thinking the knee away that this is an unfamiliar direction. Now, to make very clear, what we're not doing is a pull. This is not a pull, it is just a direction. Because if we pull the quads up, that's what we get. And we get a jamming up. And that is not what we're after. We really are just encouraging that elastic use of the muscle. Nothing forced here. It is just a thought. So let's have a look at the hamstrings. And there's another picture of the quads with all the muscles in play, actually. So there's again the big rectus femoris, the vastus medialis on the inside, lateralis on the outside. You've also got the sartorius, which is the cross-legged muscle crossing over. You've got the gracilis coming down on the inside. There you've got all the adductor muscles on the inside, the IT band on the outside. So that's, there's a heck of a lot going on in the thigh. And then, of course, there's the psoas, then carrying on the next layer up. So here's the hamstrings, and there are 3 of them. The biceps femoris, which goes from the outside of the back of the knee up to the sitting bones, and that also has a short head along the that inserts along the thigh bone. And then on the medial side, we've got the 2 inner hamstrings, semimembranosus and semitendinosus, over the top of them. And so let's just have a look at the hamstrings, because while the quads control the action of the knee, the hamstrings control the hips, and in the same way. They support the hip end eccentrically, because here you can see they're going to be influencing the hip, but at this end they're going to be influencing the knee. And then they're contracting to extend the hip. So let's just play with this. This is a play that many of you will have done with me before. I'll do it again. So find your hamstrings by finding your sitting bones, and then you bend forwards. To start with, keep your legs straight, I would suggest. And so you've got the hamstrings eccentrically slowing down that hip flex, and then if you come up again, you can feel that hamstring shortening in order to pull you up. So there's the extension action of the hamstrings on the hips. So they're stabilizing the flexing of the hips and causing the extension of the hips, the hip extenders. And then look at the action on the knee. So if you hold your hamstring tendons behind your knees and bend your knee, you can feel the hamstrings bunching as they cause that knee to be bent. So just feel that hamstring working, and then straighten the knee, and they're actually controlling the speed at which the knee straightens. And that becomes very important when we walk, because if I extend the knee too fast, if I just let that hamstring go, then the leg just swings through and I might jar my kneecap. And so the hamstring, you can feel the hamstring acting to slow the extension of the knee. and that's crucial while walking, particularly crucial while running, crucial if you're kicking a football and so on and so forth. So, and then you've also got this opposite, the rectus femoris, this main up-down quad muscle, that also is a hip flexor. Most the other three are all the knee extensors. This one muscle is a hip flexor. So if you stand, if you just lift your leg straight up, you'll feel that rectus femoris flexing the hip. The danger with too much rectus femoris is if we just use that, it can sort of put us into a bit of a tilt. But well, it is possible to use it without that. So we've got these muscles are actually doing two things at different ends of them. We'll come back to that. So, oh yes, the hamstring tendons also act to stabilise the knees. The lateral tendon has a joint tendon with the sartorius muscle and the gracilis muscle, and it acts to stabilise lateral knee movement, while the semimembranosus comes right round the back of the knee, and that helps stabilise the back of the knee. And I'm just emphasising this again to say that if we only think of releasing knee muscles, then we could be weakening those tendons, we could be slacking off those tendons, and that's again going to help to destabilise the knee. All these muscles need to be toned and strong, and their tendons need to be working and taut like tent ropes in order to stabilise the knee joint. Yeah, questions? Manuela.
Interestingly, I saw that the hamstrings articulate to the fibula, but all the front muscles articulate only into the tibia. So the hamstring is the only muscle that works the small bone on the lower leg.
Yes, I can't comment on that.
There's no representation on the front.
No, there isn't, is there? The tibia is, the fibula is. I mean, it's quite a dense. I mean, is it archaic that there's two bones there? I don't even know why there's two bones there. I mean, that's how lower limbs are. But what the evolutionary root of that is, I can't remember. So yes, Jill.
There's a very good guy on YouTube called Sam Webster.
Oh yes, I know Sam Webster.
He's excellent. He's anatomy lecturer at Swansea University.
Yes.
And he's got loads and loads of videos, very, very clear. He's got lots and lots of models. He talks about the movement. He talks about the torque and the forces. And he's a mover. He's a runner and a cyclist.
Yes, I watched some of his stuff actually for this. I did.
Yeah, I've just done it.
Yes.
Could you spell him in the chat, please?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Of course, he's using, we'll come on to the model of walking, but he's actually using the orthodox model of walking, which is the heel strike. So one that I've noticed anyway. Maybe you disagree, Jim.
I did. Yeah, I didn't listen to him about walking because.
Yeah, but running, he's
but the anatomy.
But the anatomy is great.
Yeah, yes. The nuts and bolts.
Yes,
very, very clear.
Yes, there's a certain amount in here that's directly drawn from his work. Yeah. Somebody else, Dimitri, have you got a question still?
Yes, a quick question. I was always confused about the extension of the hip because both hamstrings and glutes do that. So what's the difference?
Well, it depends on who you listen to, because the official story is that hamstrings are working all the time, but glutes only come in when you really power the movement, like going upstairs or running at speed. I completely disagree with that. I think we're supposed to be using our glutes all the time And the glutes are like adding a bit more superpower to it, I think. They're just, it's as we'll see when we, at the end, when we come to walking, that, you know, although we're talking about the power of the quads, someone like Sam Webster, with the standard model of running, he's quad dominant. He's not using the back of the body enough. And, you know, we are supposed to be powered from the back. This is something Alexander discovered. And, you know, the hamstrings are doing so much, the quads are doing so much, and then you've got these huge glute muscles really powering it. You can really see it in something like a horse, you know, a horse going over a jump, that it's the whole of the haunches working together, that you've got the glutes and the hamstrings, and then the quads, all looking to power that movement, to really take the weight of the torso and, you know, thrust it over the jump. So it's a group of muscles that work together, that work to get the maximum extension. Does that answer the question, Dimitri?
Yes, I suspect maybe they're working in different regimes in terms of one of them initiates maybe and one continues.
Well, again, I don't know, and I haven't followed up on timings. There's a lot of work being done on the timings of when muscles fire in, and, you know, I was describing earlier that the frog, the three muscles fire together, whether when we're running they're supposed to fire together or whether they're supposed to fire in a chain. There's a lot more detailed work being done on that I've not got into. So,
okay,
thank you. Google away and see what you find. Yeah, it's fascinating. I watched one on running once and it was like, wow. But I don't need to know all this, I decided, because, you know, I'm going to limit to my field here. Okay, so sports injuries can be caused by the fact that muscles are performing different actions simultaneously, because, and this is actually something I got from Sam Webster, that if you consider a footballer kicking a ball, you know, he pulls his leg back, and in which the hamstring is both extending the hip and flexing the knee, and the quad is stabilizing both those movements, and then he's going to kick through, where the hamstring, the quad is now flexing the knee, flexing the hip, and extending the knee at speed, and the hamstring is controlling those movements at speed, and so these muscles are trying to do a flexion and an extension together, and stabilize a flexion and an extension together. And Sam Webster makes the point that muscles have only got so much contractile power, which one knows, and so if you ask them to do two actions at the same time, at speed, at force, it can overwhelm them, and then they can tear. And I wonder, hurdling is another one he mentioned, again, where you go over a jump and you have to kick your leg out at speed and really thrust it forward and then land. And again, the hamstring is working to eccentrically control both those movements at speed, and it can tear. And I tore my hamstring hurdling when I was 13, and it bloody hurt doing exactly that. And I have no doubt that my hamstrings were very short at the time. I do wonder whether when we work with Alexander and we get those muscles operating out of their full length and elasticity, whether they have more capacity for doing these movements, simply because they start from a more extended place, and so they'll have more capacity for flexing and extending at the same time as they do it, and they're not trying to sort of over-contract as they do it, they're more flowing into it. I just wonder if that's one of the ways in which we can help sports people. Anyone got any thoughts on that one? It's just something to throw out there for anyone working with footballers or whatever. So let's have a look at the Alexander direction, knees forwards and away, which is the one, you know, that we're told to use, and along with that, the importance of the vastus medialis. So I've noticed there's a lot of confusion in Alexander teachers around what knees forward and away actually means, and a lot of different interpretations out there, and certainly I puzzled about it for years. So this is my understanding that there are two directions involved. The first is knees forward, and that means directing the knees forwards from the back in opposition to the back coming back. So if you flex the hip here, so you might like to stand up and play with this with me. If you over flex the hip here with the quad muscle, then you've actually shortened the knee back into the hip, and you've shortened the back into the knee. So you've shortened those two distances. So if you think knees away, you're actually lengthening that. And when you lengthen that, you get, and I think it's often best if you think it from underneath the knee, there you get this lengthening of the front of the quad. So you open up the front of the hip, and then you get the back coming back, the knee coming away, and you get that opposition. And that's actually what knees forward actually refers to. Everybody okay with that one? Everybody okay with that one? Yeah. Okay, and then we've got knees away. What does knees away mean? So knees away, as far as I'm concerned, means knees away from each other. So many people let that happen to a greater or lesser degree as they run. You see runners running down the road doing that, and you just want to get hold of them and say, come for an Alexander lesson. People land like that. That's very common for women, as we were saying earlier, because of this greater Q angle. And this is a state called valgus collapse, or dynamic knee valgus. And it's an inward caving of the knee during weight-bearing activities. And it creates excessive stress and also rotational force on the joint, which can lead to various injuries. And let's just draw up a picture of a valgus state. This is dynamic knee valgus. So you can see that what you've got is not just the knee falling in, but the knee, you've also got the hip falling in, hip adduction, and the hip is falling in and it's rotating in, and the knee is falling in, but it's actually rotating out, and the shin bone has actually moved outwards and rotated out, and then the foot, the ankle has turned out, and the inside of the foot has collapsed, has pronated. And this combination of forces, especially if it's from a high impact, I mean, if you landed from a parachute jump doing this, you can imagine the hurt you'd create. The article I got said this is what creates ACL tear, anterior collateral, the anterior cruciate ligament, and the physio I showed it to said, no, that's an MCL tear, the inside ligament, which makes much more sense. The ligament here, you can see how that would be torn or ruptured doing that. And the ACL and the MCL are the primary restraints on this force. You've got to have strong ligaments there to stop the damage from this. And of course, women are more prone because of the greater femoral angle, and knee injuries such as runner's knee are more common in women. So we are dealing not with sports injuries but with day-to-day imbalance, and I certainly noticed that women are more prone to let their knees fall in when they sit and stand. So knees away, I would suggest, is a relative term, and really it doesn't mean knees away at all. It means don't let your knees fall in. So let's play with this one. So if you have your chair and just let's start with our feet a little bit further apart, as people often do, and then let your knees fall in, and notice that it's not just the knee. It's the hip, the thigh bone has moved in, it's also rotated in a bit, and So the knee is falling in, but it's on a torque. The shin bone is actually rotating out, and the foot is collapsing, and this side of the ankle is weak. And if you do that with both knees together, what then happens as you sit and stand? So don't do this if you're going to injure yourself, but just have a go and see what you notice. Manuela?
If we keep the direction that, well, not a mental one, but the physical one, that the knee always goes in the same direction like the foot.
Mm-hmm. Coming to that.
So yeah, but then this one would not be possible, what you just showed, because
No, exactly. So here we are modelling absolutely horrible wrong use. But an awful lot of people do it, don't they? Not quite to the extreme that I'm demonstrating. So let's now send our knees, think just not knees in, but knees, as you say, forwards out over the foot, just knees away, and notice that not just the knee goes out, but the thigh now corrects, the shin corrects, the ankle corrects, the foot corrects. And what's the difference? Standing and sitting on the whole body. And does it help you to add a particular thought to if you do have a tendency to do this one, does it help to send that inside knee away? So, and so knees away is not, because I've seen a lot of Alexander teachers, actually they're so busy doing knees away that they can end up doing something like this, where the knee actually is going out over the outside of the foot, and that of course is not what we need. And that's why I say knees away is relative to where the feet are. We do want them simply going away from each other rather than falling in, but we actually want them tracking, as you say, over the line of the foot. Anyone got a comment of that? But Manuela, you still want to comment?
Yeah, this is the most interesting bit for me, because in your book study club we discovered that feet parallel does not mean feet parallel, but it means feet turned in.
Yes.
So that the front, going forward is somewhere here.
Yes.
So if you turn your feet in, then the leaf follows. So we come in, but not in this collapsed situation as you were showing.
Yes.
But actually the knees are going in when we bend slightly, and then they move out when you bend more.
That's right. We'll come to that in a minute.
I'm sorry.
Yes, that's all right. No, it's good. You're fine. You're anticipating what I'm going to say. You're absolutely right. Alison.
One of the things I noticed was when the knees collapse in, the whole rest of the torso wants to collapse. It's really difficult to get the psoas coming back and to support the rest of the body if the knees are falling in.
Yes, yes. And, I was thinking this morning about Alexander saying, well, the spine is primary and the legs are secondary. No, not necessarily.
Right.
They can all be primary. Dimitri.
So I see the benefit of direction of the knee away when I go down, when I bend the knees.
Yes.
But I don't understand on the way up. It seems like they will go together, not away.
Yes, you're absolutely right. So we'll come to the screw home mechanism in a minute. Yes. You're all too intelligent. You know more already. It's fine. Angela.
I just wanted to say, because my gluteal tendinopathy, I've been really learning a lot lately. So for me, knees away, I really have to think about knees away from hips, which is lengthening the quads. And then my knee feels able to track easily over my second toe, which comes to that eccentric or eccentric lengthening. It just feels so much more stable to think both knees away know that the quads stabilizing,
Yes,
and
this
there's
is
not that tendency to do anything with my knees. They're just tracking.
yes.
Yeah.
This is why I wasn't letting beginners. I'm not letting beginners do this workshop because we've got to be able to think knees in both directions at once, haven't we? They're still going knees forwards and away, but yet there's also this back and up action that actually stabilizes the knee as it does it. So, you know, when you work with your pupils, don't start with that one. We do have to start with knees forwards and away, but then we have to add this other one in if it's needed, when it's needed, and so on. You know, I think it's just giving you more tools to work with when you work with knees. And I'm still playing with it with pupils, finding out when it's you know, useful to use. And any feedback, guys, you can give me when you work with this with pupils, I'd love to hear. You know, so are you putting talk across the knees when sitting? Is another question that Nancy Romita asks. If you know Nancy Romita, she wrote that. She's an Alexander and yoga anatomy person. And she says that when people continually sit with, say, their knees around the back of the chair, or the one I will do if I don't watch myself again is that. And if I do that, I can really feel this knee is put into a torque. Now, for 2 minutes is not a problem, but if I sit like that all day, again, it's going to weaken. She suggests it can weaken the ligaments and the tendons. And so as you're sitting right now, just check out whether your feet are actually tracking forwards or whether you've got something a bit wacky going on, and what that is then doing to your knees. So it's just a question to observe and ask yourself. So anyone notice anything there, by the way, that they're thinking, oh my God, my knees are doing that? No revelations. Christine.
Yeah, I noticed, I maybe now it's not as much as it used to be, but for me it was always the going down and back up was, I could keep my knees on track. But once I was then starting to stand with, you know, the leg extended, it somehow started to roll in at the knees.
Right.
So I don't know, yeah, that's a bit of a question.
Well, we'll come to that in a moment with the screw
Okay.
hold mechanism and see whether that answers the question. And here's Julia. There's my attendance. There we go. Oh, everybody's here. Wonderful. Hi, Julia. Good to see you. So the knee is the meat in the sandwich, as my friend Elke says, or the hummus in the sandwich, we might say, for those of us with more susceptibilities to these things. And so often if there are, because of this, you know, you can really see how the hip, knee and the ankle work together in these sort of patterns. So if there are knee problems, you do need to address the hip and the ankle issues as well. You know, we're doing something a bit heretical here by having a workshop about knees. We're actually addressing knees because it's not something we usually do in the Alexander work. We normally work more indirectly. My friend Elke Rudolph, who's in Tasmania, she's an Alexander teacher and a physio, and she helped me with the research on knees. And she's had knee issues recently because she actually had a fall directly onto her patellas just before she was about to go on a walking holiday. And she said she used everything she'd ever learned from me about backing up with the knees, and then she used some other stuff of her own, which I'll share with you, in order to get those knees working, and she was able to do the whole walking holiday, which I think is amazing, actually. So she helped her knees when walking by tracking the 4 contact points of the feet. And I said 4 contact points. So the first one obviously was our friend the ball of the big toe, by which she meant the medial sesamoid, the inner sesamoid. And then she said the heel, which is the heel peeling up as she walked. And then, of course, there's the base of the little toe. She said not with weight on it, just awareness of it. And then her 4th point was the lateral side of the lateral sesamoid. Now, it takes a bit to think where that might be, but it's sort of I think she means sort of the inner or the outer edge, across laterally, the outer edge of the ball of the foot. And it's going to be where that is. And so just keeping awareness of that, because she said that's where the VMO, the vastus medialis oblique, that this inner muscle here, when she touches the foot down, it's that inner outer side of the ball of the big toe, that outer sesamoid, that actually activates that inner muscle there. So just have a play with that, see if you can find that. We'll do more with this muscle in a minute, and you'll get more sense of it. So when you have the awareness of the ball of the big toe and the outer side of the foot and the back of the foot, and then this sort of rather more midline point of the foot, then you get the balance of the muscles across the leg. And this guy activates as the knee tracks over that second and third toe, which again you all know that's what happens. And the base of the little toe is keeping the lateral line going. And then she said if her ankles hurt as well, because she's got weak ankles, then she'd add a bit of screw in the ankle. So anyone like to comment on that? So this is just relating what we're talking about with the knees through into the feet. Manuela?
I didn't understand what you were talking about, the placement of the foot. It's very, very difficult to hear when
Okay,
you're away.
right, I'll say it all again. So very often when people talk about the foot, they talk about the 3 points of the foot. Now, when we've talked about the foot, we've said that we're not putting weight. A lot of people talk about putting equal weight on the inside and the outside of the foot. So they talk about putting equal weight here, here and here. Now we don't, as you know, we put more weight here and just awareness here. But she's adding in awareness of this point here. So a sort of a more midline point. And so she's just aware of those 4 points as she's walking. And she says that one, awareness of here, as that goes down, it activates this muscle here, this inner quad muscle. So have a go, Manuela, just sort of have a little play and see if you can notice that just being aware of that somehow does activate that, because a lot of people, they'll walk sort of more on the outside of the foot and then you lose this muscle here. If you walk with the turned out feet, you lose this one. We'll come back to that. So adding that point. And it's interestingly, because you see, I would have assumed that it was just adding the ball of the big toe generally that brought back that, but she said no, it's this particular point, and she may be right. Angela?
Astonishing. I couldn't believe it. Just that little subtle shift across in my thinking. My knee went forward, and this is the problem. The problem side was like, oh, hello, that's better.
Wow. Yes.
Thank you. That's amazing.
That's wonderful. Good. That's good. Manuela, how are you finding this? Is it making sense? Anyone else, Suzanne?
I feel it keeps the knee from falling in. That's what many pupils can't separate. Like if they think of the ball of the big toe, the knee come in. So
Yes.
I feel this medial point keeps the knee from falling in, makes more stable, much more stable.
That's lovely. Thank you. Manuela?
I cannot address this point in my foot.
Maybe keep playing with it.
Yeah.
So what I didn't say is that when you've got that valgus pattern, the muscles that are involved, this muscle switched off here, that's the VMO, the vastus medialis, and it's also called the vastus medialis oblique because there's a sort of little teardrop shaped bit of it, and they did wonder whether it's a different muscle, but it's not. But it's often just referred to as the VMO. So if you find people talking about the VMO, they're really just talking about the vastus medialis. But the adduction and turning in here, that's the gluteus medius, our friend from hip lifts, if you remember that one. And this muscle and this muscle really go together. So if that's happening, they've both switched off. And the other guy that's switched off is the fibularis longus, the one that's for the outside of the ankle. And so you're switching back on here, and you can see the outside of the ankle coming into play. And that's also why she wants the lateral side of the foot, also just the awareness there, just to keep this side of the body awake, because she said if she doesn't do that, again, it starts to just fall. So you're really working with all 3 points. But from my noticing, I don't think you have to mentally track all of them. I think you can track one of them and it looks after the others because they all work together. So I've been working from the knee, but she's been working with the foot on this way, and boom, in it all comes. So, Alison.
I was just playing with going into a lunge on one side because I tend to fall in on one side. Made a big difference. It was, straight away. Very interesting.
Fantastic. And again, this thinking up of the quad is fantastic for lunge. Just again, feel that quad is supporting the knee as you lunge. Julia.
Yes, I have bunions. So, yeah, I can feel that because, in fact, I've had knee problems, and the expert, she wasn't a podolog, but anyway, she said that I needed to walk more towards the inside of my foot.
Yes, well, people with bunions tend to avoid the inside of their foot because it hurts.
Right.
It's exactly the opposite of what one needs to do. And my sense of bunions is that they're often caused. I've worked with people who've worn high heels all their life and never had bunions because they're actually using their feet in the right orientation. And people who've never worn high heels but who work like that, who have terrible bunions. So my thought is that bunions actually come far more from the turning out of the feet, because the pressure then comes here. If every time you go to walk you put that pressure there, that's where the body is going to build tissue, and that's then going to force the toe out. So the big thing with bunions to me is actually reorienting the leg and the foot and getting the pressure going through these points here, and the knee tracking that way, and that actually will slowly redress the toes, and then the body can recover. Is that what you're playing with, Julia?
Yes, but just to be clear, I was a ballet dancer, so I was on point, and it was my way of being on point. I mean, I've got pictures and yes. Yeah, so it was really from point work.
Yes, so you've been putting enormous strain through that poor joint for, yeah.
Wow.
Well, it's amazing what can, one can't guarantee what healing, but it's amazing what can happen. So keep working with it. Thank you.
Right, thank you.
That. Primary and secondary curves. So if you, just to play with this briefly, that, as I say, any of these problems is going to be made worse by standing in a secondary curve, because you've just got you lose the midline muscles. I think when we stand in a secondary curve, we just lose the midline muscles to a degree, and that's, I certainly can feel there's far more tension in the IT band, far more weight going through the vastus medialis, through the vastus lateralis. This outside of the leg is just working too hard, tight arse, whereas this side is switched off. We'll come back to that. And then knock knees and bow legs. like I said, I had knock knees and bow legs together. And as we said in Book Study Club, the knock knees is partly a tight tibialis anterior tendon, because the tendon comes down there, and so if that muscle is tight, it actually pulls the knee in. And there's that method I describe in chapter 10 of the book, where you let your knee fall in and then pull it slowly out, literally to stretch that tendon out again. You can feel it. And I had a woman years ago who came in, she was like this. She got a scoliosis and this leg was completely collapsed under her. She could hardly walk, she was in such pain. And I just got her doing that exercise. She was sat all day, so she was doing it for hours a day, and she actually got that leg back under her and could walk again. We didn't fully sort the pain, but it certainly made a difference. Now that is not Alexander technique, that's physio, but it worked, as it were. I don't care. It's, you know, I could not have worked on her hands-on and got that change. She did it for herself. So I think there's horses for courses here. So, and of course between duck toes and pigeon toes, the anatomically functional foot faces forwards while standing. And I don't need to prove that to you guys, you've all worked with me on this one, with the second and third toe pointing forwards. And it was the one part of functional anatomy that Alexander didn't discover it. And I think most people stand in some form of secondary curve, and as I say, it just deactivates all these midline muscles. It deactivates the adductors. Those are the first ones I discovered. We've talked a lot more about medial hamstrings in recent years, and then this latest discovery is that deactivates the vastus medialis. And of course also the psoas is dumbed down as well, the medial arch of the foot, and so on. So, and of course we all have deactivated legs now, quite simply from too much sitting around, too much using cars. So here's a wonderful picture of a man standing in a secondary curve. Where is it? Where is it? Where is it? Where is it? Here. Feast your eyes on that one. Isn't that fantastic? So can you see that? So this Victorian gentleman, I found this sculpture in the British Museum. I just thought it was fantastic. And everything is rotated out. This is what Alexander describes as bad posture. When he describes bad posture, this is what he's describing. So let's play with that. So if you'd all like to stand up and come into that lovely Victorian pose, so turning your feet out and your hips have pushed forward, your belly has no doubt rolled forwards, you're leaning back, everything turns out, you're feeling lovely and pompous. Now what Alexander describes in Man Supreme Inheritance, to come out of that, he says come back from the ankle. So just come back from the ankle. And, oh, I just want to turn my feet in at that point. I feel my hips come back. There's a point at which my quads relax, because you can feel the strain there on the quads, just like from my mother. You feel the quads just go, oh yeah, we can soften down. The knee can just relax down. This can soften down, this can come up. And the legs, my legs just want to turn in, and so do the arms. I'm sure yours do too. T8 can come back, and so the more precise direction for knees, as several of you are already saying, is actually knees track forwards, away from the back, knees track forwards, over the second and third toes. And I now find that the really good fitness trainers, the really good physios who know about this are actually giving that direction, that knees track forward over the second and third toes. And that's actually why I only wrote knees forward in my book, not knees forwards and away, which Robin Simmons got really cross about. Let's just play with these instructions from a unity line. And of course Alexander, there was that image there of Alexander standing in that beautiful unity line, everything just really flat down the body. Knees forwards from over the second and third toes. If you send knees away, it doesn't make any sense. The knees go forwards and then thinking this back and up. So again, just thinking this back and up both ways. Okay, so time for a little break, I think. Any questions? And then we'll take a little break.
I don't know if you are going to cover squatting here.
Not directly, no.
When I squat, it's really almost impossible to keep the feet facing forward. I have to turn them out.
Yeah, that's
Then it
because
becomes
some
one
of the
direction.
tendons are short. That's because some of the muscles are over shortened
Yeah.
still. And when you squat, it's crucial that you only go as far as you can keep that alignment and just work with it at that point. Just gently bounce it or think directions there or breathe there and see if you can get another millimetre and another millimetre and another
So
millimetre.
you don't recommend squatting with the feet pointing out?
Well, you know, if you want to squat and that's the only way you can squat, then yes. But if we're being purist about it, if you want to work the full extension, then you need to be working in that plane. Because, you know, if I get to here and then, you know, I haven't got enough length in my back, that's what I will then want to do in order to go the rest of the way. Well, it works, but if I really want to get the full extension in my back, then I've just got to get as far as I can and just work it and work it. Keep finding that length, keep finding this space, and again thinking these and these, and until you can get all the way up and down in that orientation. And it may take forever, but it's wonderful if you can get there.
Yeah, I agree. I will keep
Yes.
working that, but in the meantime, I still think it's valuable to do full squat.
I agree. It's better to squat in any ways and put the other ones to put a block under your feet so that you can keep the orientation, but actually work with the functional less length. That's the other way of doing
So
it.
can you give me some a direction to use when I do have feet pointed away?
Well, I mean, just work with knees forward over toes. Even if you're working in that plane, just keep knees forward over toes. Don't let them fall in. Don't let them fall out. See if you can keep that plane. But you can just, you know, work from a height as well, so that you've just, you know, you've got more something more substantial probably than a moving dumbbell. But you know, whatever. But it's good to squat. It is good to work the full flexion of the knee in whatever way you can. So you're absolutely right. Keep squatting. Yeah. Manuela.
I have a question. Do you remember, Penelope, in 1 hour of our book study club lessons, we had the idea that the condyles of the knee are not the same size.
We're going to deal with that next. Yes, that's after the break.
Because then they
Yes.
would turn out.
Well, but yes and no. We'll look at that.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll do that straight after the break. Christine.
I just tried this stroking up the knees for squatting, and it helps me so much. It's amazing.
Well,
And
that's
for coming back up, it's really changing everything.
yes.
Thank you.
Yes. Yes. I mean, I love Carol's description that it feels like an ace bandage, because it does. It just feels like the knee is supported in what it's doing. And it's also got the lift in it. Yeah, no, I love it. It's just game changing. For me, for you, not for others, it's fine. Let's take 10 minutes. We break, whatever. Make yourself a cup of tea. See you back here shortly. I'm going to pause the video. For God's sake, somebody remind me to put it back on again when we come back. Back on. I've remembered. Toes in, knees out. That's the one. Okay, so up until now, we've been looking at the knee purely as a hinge joint and just moving in the sagittal plane only. That's just forwards and back. But there's much more going on. The knee also rotates outwards when we bend and inward when we straighten to standing, as some of you have been bugging me to come on to. And that means that thinking knees forward and away is of course only right for half the time. And that's another reason for using the direction knees forwards over the middle toes, over the second and third toes. The medial condyle is the bigger one, and that's, you can not really see that in this model, but it's the medial condyle is much bigger than the outer one. And as you bend, if I model that with two balls, so if I put them in the groove of the tibial plateau, and if that's the inner condyle and that's the outer condyle, as I roll those two balls forwards equally, you can see that the bigger one will tend to rotate around the smaller one, and that actually is going to twist the bone that's above it. And then when they roll back equally. So the femur bone is externally rotated and then internally rotated again. And it's a simple physical mechanism caused by those unequal condyles. Brilliant biology. So it's particularly in the last 20% of extension, that last bit, that suddenly the knee goes woof and the thigh goes in and round. So let's play with that. Just if you stand up and hold your knees, and if you bend slowly, you can feel that the knee is rotating out, and that as you come in again, particularly at the last minute, you'll feel that knee rotate inwards. There it goes outwards, and there it goes inwards. And it's actually in the thigh bone. The thigh bone is rotating out, and the thigh bone is rotating inward. But it doesn't affect the knee tracking. It's not that this is happening. Just noticing that, and this sort of completely puzzled me to start with, that the thigh bone itself is rotating out, but the knee tracks beautifully straight forwards, up and down. So the overall direction of the knee is not affected by this rotation of the bone, because the tibia must be doing the opposite, and as we'll come to. Can everybody feel that happening? Yeah. So this is called the screw-home mechanism. Screw as in screwing a note, home as in where we live. It's the screw-home mechanism. And it effectively locks the knee joint into extension, and it actually creates a very slight hyperextension, apparently, that just really gets that leg to lock straight, and it pulls those four ligaments, the two cruciate ligaments, the two collateral ligaments on either side, pulls them all taut, and that enables us to stand without strain. So you can stand, you can let your quads go, the knee can be, and my knee is just balanced, but it's not locked. It's not the same as, it's not locked back in terms of the muscles taut. The muscles can actually relax, but we can stand stably. Horses must do something even cleverer than this, because they can actually go to sleep on their feet. And also they have a mechanism that just locks their knees, apparently, locks their legs straight all night, and then they're not taking any energy and the horse doesn't fall over. We can't do that, but we can stand without using energy. And so it's important while we're standing, and it's also important in the stance leg while walking. So terminal knee extension, sounds awful, terminal knee extension, my God, my knees only got so long. But that terminal knee extension is crucial for daily living, because again, if we stand with slightly bent legs, and I was horrified to realise that I got into a habit of standing with slightly bent legs. So check yourself very carefully, because I was so busy getting my tailbone to relax and this to come up and this to come down. Can you see? I'm slightly pushing my knees forward. I went on a Bruce Furtman workshop in November, and he pointed it out, and I was like, oh God, I teach this. There it is. So faulty sensory perception rules okay. Check whether you have actually got into a habit of letting your bum go under a little bit too much. So help your thighs come back to straight by stroking them down. I said we'd do some stroking thighs down. So, because if the knee is slightly forward, if your knee's bent, it's that's slightly forward. So send the thigh down and back and just notice that it just lets that knee come rather passively to straight, and it sends the behind behind. It puts your backside behind you. Whereas if you've got into a habit of doing this, your backside will be a little bit underneath you. Have your behind behind. Now if we overdo it, of course, we'll duck's ass. And there's a fine line here. So you're releasing that down, but you're not letting, if we let that happen, the ribs will pop up. So you're really noticing that as you stroke those down, you're also keeping these down, and then the behind just becomes behind, but here actually stays down. So it took me a while to readjust my perception around this, because it felt like every time I straightened my legs fully, my arse popped up. And it wasn't, it was just going back to where it was supposed to be. Now, then of course one can end up with the lower leg too far back, so paradoxically the thigh is thinking back, the calf is actually thinking slightly forward, because we don't want that, again, we don't want that hyperextension of the thigh, of the calf that you can see there, where my lower leg actually comes behind the heel. So this is coming back, but that actually is sinking very slightly forwards, and then you get something that just is quite solid, energy free, and much easier to stand on actually. Again, to help the calf thing, you might also think that one that we just did earlier, the ankles come back. The ankles come back, but the calves come forward, but the thighs come back. So there's a sort of a forwards and back going through the leg. And the soles of the feet go forward for that matter. The soles of the feet lengthen forward, the ankles come back, the calves come forward, the thighs come back. I probably confused you there. Could you hear me all right? I probably dropped my voice. Yeah, good. Any comments on that? Anyone discover they were standing on slightly bent legs? Good, good. So it's amazing what can happen when you stop watching fully. Right, okay. So here we are getting our thighs, our legs fully straightened, particularly that last 20%, and then we've got a problem, because how to unlock it? Because the hamstring muscles are the ones that flex the knee, but they pull straight up, and we've actually put a slight screw lock onto the mechanism, and the hamstrings don't have a rotational element to them to unlock that. So there's a little muscle behind the knee called the popliteus, and that is the key here, and it goes from the outside of your knee, wraps around the back and comes across to the inside of the back of the tibia. So if you just feel that one, so it's going from the outside of the knee and it's wrapping around the back to the inside of the tibia, and then if it pulls in that direction, you can feel it's actually going to internally rotate the tibia, which actually unlocks it and allows the knee to bend. So now, the significance of this is that it moves the knee, it unlocks the knee depending on which end of the leg is more stable. So if the foot is on the ground, so you've got a closed chain, then the tibia is actually the more stable end, and this is the end that's more capable of moving. And so it's the femur that actually, when the popliteus does its thing, it's the femur that will rotate to unlock the knee. But if you've got somebody lying in semi-supine and their leg is fully out and is fully extended, you might have noticed one needs to sort of bring to bring their knee up. You want to do a sort of internal twist of the femur, of the tibia, to get their knee to release, to bend, and that's what we're using. That when the foot is in the air, this end is more stable, this end is more free, and so it's this internal rotation of the tibia that happens that actually unlocks the knee. And I'm certainly aware of that if I pick somebody's leg up on the table. Does that resonate? Yeah, so that's what we're using there. It's just, I thought that was really interesting to discover that. And I think you actually functionally both are happening at the same time. And I don't know whether anyone else can feel this, but if I hold my knee and my tibia and just bend, I can feel that the tibia is going one way and the femur is going outwards and the tibia is going the other way and then back again. So I think you can actually feel the fact that you've got this counter rotation going on through the leg as you bend and as you straighten. As long as all the joints are free and there's enough elasticity in the system for these rotations to happen. Yeah. Okay. So, any questions and all that? Carol, welcome. Sorry Brenda was picking up emails of people not getting in earlier. I'm sorry she missed yours. Sorry, I can't hear you. Manuela.
Could you again explain why, about the two different sizes of the condyle of the knee joint? Why is it that the knee does not move out in further bending, but is able to move straight forward?
I think it's because that if just the thigh moved out, I think this is a point the anatomists miss, because they talk about one end rotating or the other end rotating. If that rotated out and the tibia didn't make a counter rotation, it would do that. But because the tibia is rotating in the other way, I think it keeps it tracking. And I've not read anyone say that, but to me that's just common sense. Okay. What do you think? You know, they talk about one man's bending or the other, but to me both actually have to be working. Would people agree with that? Mm-hmm. And you can feel it in action. And then again, I think when we take people's legs up and down in semi-supine, one can really be playing with that rotation and counter rotation. Jill?
That's the direction you give if someone's on a saddle.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah, spoken by a Carrington person. Lovely. Thank you. There's somebody at our local exchange doing saddle work with us at the moment, and it's in Edinburgh, and I'm having saddle work for the first time, and it's really nice actually. Yeah, so I haven't yet had the courage to get her to get me to do it, but yeah, I will. So courage is the wrong word. I just don't feel I know enough yet. I haven't experienced it enough. Yeah. So let's talk more about the vastus medialis and the VMO. Carol, we was going to just say hi. That's yeah. So vastus medialis, like I say, it's the quad on the medial side of the knee, and it's the particularly important muscle, particularly for the screw home mechanism, and particularly that bottom bit of the muscle that they call the VMO. And the consensus of all the various sources that I looked at on knees was that most people who suffer from long-term knee pain have a weak vastus medialis muscle, and that is seen as the causative factor to a degree. If the vastus medialis is weak, it alters the way the knees move. It alters how the forces are directed through the knee, and it places excessive strains on the knee. So let's just have a look at its functions. So the vastus medialis muscle has several functions: to extend the knee along with the other three quad muscles, and to pull the knee into full extension, engaging the screw-home mechanism. To keep the kneecap properly aligned as the leg is straightened, and to stabilize the kneecap, and it is arguably the most responsible muscle for knee stability. If the vastus medialis has problems, it can undermine these functions and lead to knee instability, particularly with weight-bearing activities, and you'll feel it if you squat, if you lunge, if you jump. Problems with patella tracking, how the kneecap moves in its groove. Acute or chronic knee pain, especially anterior knee pain, such as patellofemoral pain syndrome, otherwise known as runner's knee. Difficulty moving, walking, climbing stairs, cycling, anything involving squatting and rising. And I think people with knee problems will recognize most of these. And foot over pronation, an inward roll of a foot, and a flattened medial arch. So let's look at those in turn. So to extend the knee and engage the screw-home mechanism, let's look at that one first. Dog, go away. Go on, in the back room. Go, off you go, off you go, off you go, off you go. You can't hear him, I think it drives me nuts. Rub your vastus medialis a few times, just to waken it up, this one on the inside of the knee. And if you bunch your knee, you can actually see the bulge of it, that you're just rubbing it to wake it up. And then let's do what we did earlier, but instead of focusing up the middle of the knee, focus up this side, this inner quad muscle, and just stroke it up, and be aware of it working in that final bit of knee extension. That it's really responsible for that final pulling in of the kneecap, because it's the one that attaches to the inside of the kneecap. So who was it saying earlier that in the last bit of knee extension the kneecap turns in? It's supposed to happen. That is what's supposed to happen. And that's why thinking knees forward and away, and then one stands and feels that happen, and you go, what? It's supposed to happen. It's the stabilizer. So, of course, don't hyperextend. Keep the calves thinking forward and the knees free as you do that. Anyone like to comment on that one? Is that okay? You can feel that? Yeah. Oh, Mairead's here as well. Good, good. So then let's look at keeping the kneecap properly aligned as we straighten. So, and as we've seen, that Q angle is greater in women than men. So, and of course, because the thigh is at an angle, you can actually feel it. That the thigh bone, you'd think the thigh bone ran straight down the middle of the leg, but it doesn't. You feel where the bone is, it's much more on the outside of the leg. This is all flesh. The thigh bone is much more on the outside of the leg, so there's the angle. And the angle affects the pull on the kneecap. So if you stand with your heels under your hips, this is a game I made up, see if it works for you. It worked for Elke. Bend your knees and hold your kneecaps. Now gently straighten your leg and feel and watch the kneecap. Just see if you can watch your kneecap. You can actually see mine moving inwards. I'll come closer to the camera. I think you can actually, and you see that there's a point where my kneecap actually moves inwards. Now, if I functionally reduce my Q angle, increase my Q angle by putting my legs together. The angle of my thighs is now that. I'm going to do exactly the same thing, bend and straighten, and it doesn't move in. It now actually tracks laterally rather than, it even moves slightly out rather than slightly inwards. So I'm going to bring my legs back under my hips and do the same again, and now it moves inwards again. Is that the same? Again, this is something I've observed. Anyone else observing the same thing? Alison, you're observing it. Julia's observing it. Philip's observing it. Yeah, Tineka's observing it. So this is another reason why, you know, being taught to stand with our legs together is a bad idea. And Jill, you know, not ever forget skirts, wear trousers. You know, this may be part of recovering your knees. Who knows? So I think this is really important. And then, of course, the stabilising. Anyone want to comment on that? No. So then the stabilising the kneecap, because the vastus, as I say, the vastus lateralis attaches to the outer side of the kneecap, and the vastus medialis attaches to the inner side of the kneecap, and ideally those forces are the same. But often the structures on the outer side of the knee are stronger, and again, your physioanatomist takes it for granted that that is so, particularly in sports people, that these will be stronger. I mean, to me, if these are stronger in all these people, it simply says to me that actually they're not using the medial line of the body enough. So it would be interesting to look at, I don't know, a Kalahari Bushman or someone who's been using his body in balance all his life and see whether actually the same problems occur, but whether these are stronger there, whether we're actually evolved to have stronger muscles on the outside. I suspect not, but that's complete conjecture, that's the word I'm after. So if these muscles are stronger and these muscles are weaker, that means that every time we track, the muscle is going to go, the patella is going to go that way, and that's what will then cause the problem. And I suspect that's why my patella actually tracks out on this leg, because I've stood for years. This is my dominant leg for standing because of the leg imbalance I had when I was a kid. And you can see I'm immediately on the outside of this leg. This side is going to be stronger than this side. No wonder the patella is drawn that way. So long term, when the patella is being tracked and it's grating that way every time it moves, of course it's not moving properly in its groove, it's being slightly pulled across the bone, and that's just going to produce wear and tear, it's going to produce inflammation. It's a big, big, big cause of knee pain in people. And the ligaments here of that apparently can be very, very tight. Elka says that if thinking directions doesn't work sufficiently to retract the knee, then get a physio actually to loosen off those ligaments, because if they've been like that a long time, they might need a bit of massage or dry needling or something, or taping or something to wake them up again. So let's play with this. So what we want is a very strong active VMO to resist the tendency of the patella to move outwards. So as you extend the knees, trace the VMO pulling inwards and upwards to pull. Think of it pulling the patella medially. So you're not doing it, of course, but you're just imagining that rather than just being pulled upwards, the patella is actually being drawn that way. And just see what you notice. If you think of the VMO pulling up, not just the middle of the quads pulling up, but the VMO pulling up, what changes for you? And this one for me is my bow legs. So if I think about coming up to the lateral, my bow legs are in operation. If I think about doing this vastus medialis, look how it changes the shape of my legs. So I can think to the outside, I can think to the inside. So again, how much of bow legs is down to a lack of these innerline muscles. So what are you discovering? What are you finding here? Anyone got a comment on this one? Angela?
Much more comfortable, and legs feel so much more balanced in that movement.
Yeah.
It's a miracle.
Beautiful, thank you.
Thank you.
Yes. Jill?
More, yeah, very stable.
Isn't it? Yeah, just getting that final bit of the patella coming across and the stability across the joint. Julia?
Yeah, again, very stable, but it makes so much sense because I have hyperextended knees and I work with dancers with hyperextended knees, and just by strengthening the VMO, is it? It changes everything, changes alignment as well. It's amazing.
Are you noticing that it stops the hyperextension?
Oh yes, completely.
That's what I'm noticing. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, we're on new ground here. I haven't read anybody discussing this. So these are my discoveries, these based on these physio, these anatomical cues.
Well, I give dancers exercises to strengthen it on purpose. Yeah.
You do. Yeah, good. So you're already onto this. But yes, it stops the hyperextension, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It stabilizes it up. Good. Lovely. Yeah. So why does the vastus medialis malfunction? There are several reasons. It can be weak, it can be fatigued, it can be misfiring, not coming in its firing sequence, or switched off altogether. And that can be because of traumatic injury, which speaks for itself, with overuse patterns, that the muscle's fatigued or weak or whatever. Pain in the knee, we'll have a closer look at this one, but bizarrely, the body's response to knee pain is to switch off the quad muscles. And that then leads to instability and contraction of other muscles to compensate, which all worsen the problem. And the VMO is the first one to switch off. Standing with turned out feet, and this emphasizes the external rotators, vastus lateralis and the IT band, as I've said, and the medial muscles weaken and can atrophy. Overuse problems, the VMO is commonly overloaded with repeated use, such as walking downhill or downstairs, suddenly increasing your volume of running or cycling or jumping, as basketball, cycling. Being overzealous in rehabbing the VMO, too much strengthening too soon, and it can also be overactivated as a protective response in response to knee injury or surgery. So watch out for people who've had knee replacements. So from our point of view, as Alexander teaches, we would suggest that if the quads are overloading in this way, it probably means that the person is too focused in the front of the body, they're quad dominant, and they've not got enough going on at the back. And of course, we're always working to get the back working, the hamstrings working, the back muscles working, everything working with a more back to front balance. And you also then need to activate your core muscles, your thoracolumbar fascia, and so on. So let's just play with bouncing in a quad dominant way. Warning, this is not a very nice thing to do, but let's do it anyway. So I'm going to just think about my quads bouncing me, really letting my quads overwork here. And then I'm going to think, I'll just have a go at that. And then I'm going to think about T8 and getting the back, the knees coming forwards from behind rather than in front, because if the knees come forward, again, a quad bounce can be all sort of collapsing in the front. Getting the knees coming forward from behind, and that becomes much lighter. And then add in this up thought, either to your rectus femoris or to the VMO as you bounce as well. So you've got the back of the body working, and then you're also focusing this up at the front of the body, and suddenly I turn into a rubber ball. So, anyone else notice a difference there? Yeah, I'm puffing now. Good. Anyone want to comment? Working just from the quads is horrible, isn't it? Anyone feel that one? Just being quad dominant. It's just like the whole body doesn't integrate. You put the back of the body in and it integrates. Put in that up in the quads and you just soar. So for cyclists, I mean, you probably all know this one, but most cyclists are going pound, pound, pound. They're really working the quads to extend that knee downwards, to push the pedal down. And if instead one thinks up, 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 then the extension downwards just happens and you get a much smoother cycling, and then you can also think up at the same time, and that makes cycling so much easier. And the same is true then of walking downhill, because again, people walking downhill they go quite heavily into the front of the knees, and you know, downhill is classic place for knee pain. Again, if one thinks about this up, 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 both up the back of the body but also up the front here, then the front of the leg becomes much lighter and the emphasis is more up than down, and the knee, the whole movement going downhill becomes much springier. So, okay. I wonder if VMO issues are going downstairs as well. Absolutely, yes, quite. I've been going, just to tell you, I've been going everywhere. When I was really actively working on this before Christmas, because my knees were so bloody painful, every step I was taking, I was doing this. And walking down the road like that, just reminding my knees, think up, think up, think up, because they were hurting and they were wanting to grip at every step, and they were also just buckling under me, which was not much fun walking downstairs, but not at any time. And so I was just going around thinking this up, up, up thought all the time, and just retraining my nervous system to think in the other direction. And within a few days, the pain was gone. But it took a few weeks for the nervous system to dial it in there. So I wonder if VMO issues do link to the autonomic nervous system and to stress, because as you know, I think that standing with the turned out feet emphasizes the external rotators, the vastus lateralis in the IT band, and that the secondary curve, these external rotators are activated by the sympathetic nervous system, and the internal rotators are activated by the parasympathetic nervous system. This is Julien Pineau's theory. I don't know whether it's at all mainstream science, but this is the theory and it seems to bear out. And I've noticed that the midline muscles are the ones that shut down with pain and trauma. Like we were saying earlier about people who are overweight, it starts with a trauma that shuts down the psoas. And, people who are traumatized, they're thrown out of their midline. And, as somebody comes back together again, as they come back to themselves, they come back to the midline. I think we play this out quite physically as well as energetically. And so the minute that there's pain and trauma, these midline muscles, the VMO is the first to shut off with pain, the psoas is the first to shut off with trauma. My medial hamstrings were gone. So they seem much more sensitive to stress. So I think that when the vagal tone is lost, they stop getting activated. And the body goes a bit weaker, and so the sympathetic muscles go, right, we can carry this, we're going to carry the can, we're fine. And so it looks like nothing's wrong, and people can go on and be really fit and powerful, but actually they're lacking that midline. It's at a cost. And so waking up the inner line muscles, actually, we're doing this in a very gung-ho physical way today, but if you're working with pupils, it really needs to go along with seeing spatially, and breathing and calm and all that safety stuff to allow them to re-access those midline muscles. So just to say that, because we're not really doing a let's come quiet today. Let's talk more about the pain. Let's say the idea that the VMO switches off with pain came from Elke. and that of course makes for a negative feedback cycle because the muscle is already weak, and she also said she remembers most from her training a weak muscle is a painful muscle. Even if there's nothing wrong with it, if a muscle is weak, it's going to be sending a pain signal. And that makes sense for the knees. If the knee is weak after all, it might give, it might buckle, and that's dangerous, ergo send a pain signal. So the pain doesn't always mean there's something wrong, it can just mean weakness. And what that knee doesn't need is miles and miles and miles of strengthening exercises, it just needs the whole thing integrating around it again and bringing back into all the muscles being recruited again. But she said for her walking holiday again, every time her knees went into pain, she realised her muscles were switched off, and of course if they were switched off, everything else would then contract, and that would then tighten the joint, make the pain worse, and so on. VMO, vastus medialis oblique. Yeah, that's what you're meant, Nicola? Yeah. Sorry, I've got used to the contraction. VMO, vastus medialis oblique, the bottom part of the vastus medialis muscle. So she said activating the quads can actually just take the pain down again, and if it's the less acute the pain, the better, the longer that will last. She said if there's any sort of knee arthritis, particularly in flare-ups, and most people get knee arthritis at some point, to some degree apparently, the message from the brain will be coming in all the time, switch off the quads. And it's the last thing that's useful. So to teach people with knee arthritis, switch your quads back on, switch your quads back on, and you'll have to keep doing it. So let's look at her. She's given me 3 quad activation exercises, and the first is very simple, which is to go into semiflexion. And I'm thinking up, and then I'm going to think my VMO up as I bring the heel up. Now you can do it one at a time, or once you get it going, you can do it in a walking rhythm. So you're just stroking your VMO up as you're doing that, and then just see how that feels. Anyone like to comment? And she said she was using this on her walk. Alison?
It's just amazing how much lighter the movement is when you get the quads involved. When I tried to switch them off, it was so much more effort and so much harder.
Yes. It is the muscle that powers movement. Dimitri?
So I think you kind of talked about it, but kind of went fast for me. I didn't quite catch it. So you mentioned the quad dominant people. And so when is the quad activation a good thing and when it's not?
Oh, well, I mean, it needs to be in balance. So again, this is why I'm saying we don't work with this with somebody who's just begun Alexander lessons. We want to be making sure before we go into this that the hamstrings are also in play, and the glutes are also in play, and the back is also in play, and that the knees are releasing forward and away. So we've got all those sort of standard Alexander, let's balancing everything up thing going on, and then we're adding this into the mix. We're adding it as a second layer. Does that make sense, Dimitri? Does that answer the question? Sort of.
Sometimes I just don't know if I'm overusing the quads or not. I suspect I do.
Sure, and the fact that you were telling us earlier that you can't squat tells me that your back line is still rather shortened, which means you're more likely to be going into overuse patterns. So just keep working on that back. The second one she did might be the one for you then, because that's where you go into a wall sit. bring my computer over there. It's exactly the same thing, but in a wall sit. Those of you who are doing the fitness work with me will know this jolly fun game where you just bend the knees forward and you go into a wall sit. Now, again, a wall sit, you really feel the quads work, and I think you really need to get them coming from underneath, get the back coming back and up. So we've got the transverse abdominis in play. Everything is really working in like wall work. And then you could even do the same thing again, but you're really, again, just stroking those quads. It really does wake them up to do a bit of, and you know, for that matter, lunges as well, I guess. But those are your. I think the first one is more useful when you're out and about, because you can just, and certainly I was using that when I was first rehabilitating my knees before Christmas. Was just, you know, going into semi-flexion if my knees hurt, do that for half a minute, and then I was away again. The third one is more of a physio exercise. It is a straight physio exercise, as it were, which is I'm going to put my knee up. The cushion would probably be more comfortable, but I've got this little creation so that my knee, my thigh is at an angle, but the back of the knee is free. And I can then support back, so my back is straight, and then I'm just going to think the VMO particularly to bring my knee to straight. So this is a strengthener. If you feel your VMO actually needs some physical strengthening, then this is the exercise to do. And when I first did this, I could get that knee to full extension, but not this one. It was very difficult. Now it will go to full extension. So that was also an interesting one to note. So that's really, and you know, again, if you're being a gym bunny, you put ankle weights on while you're doing it as well. But whether you want to do that is your choice. Any comment on these? But that's all just waking up that full extension mechanism and waking up the quads. So that's very much a physio perspective, that one. Okay, so the last thought before we get on to walking is that another website I watched, a functional neurology fitness person who goes, her YouTube is aligned, not aligned, but aligned, and she comments that actually knee injuries don't happen basically in the sagittal forwards and back plane. They actually happen in the side-to-side plane. If you stand on one leg and balance, as the knee and the whole leg seeks balance, you can see it's the side-to-side movement of the knee, the ankle and the hip that is actually seeking balance, not the forwards back. Just try that and just notice that's the plane in which the body is seeking balance and stability, not the forwards and back. So she comments that when somebody's got a knee injury, we then become very clear about only getting them to move their knee in the sagittal plane, but actually that misses the fact that if they then go out in the countryside and step on a stone, their brains will not have mapped that shape. They won't have mapped that more extreme position of the in which the medial or the lateral collateral ligaments start to get involved to hold you, and the ankles likewise. And you need that mapped. So she says, you know, do all these other stuff. Do a certain amount of, you know, wild stuff with your knees. Just so your body knows it can do it. And then if you are out in the countryside and you go to there, your brain goes, oh yeah, I know that. Because otherwise, when you go to that, it can't work it out fast enough to save the day in the emergency situation, because it all happens too fast. The brain already has to know those pathways. Anyone like to comment on that? So it's just an interesting thought. So it's back to my thing that I say anyway, which is walk on rough ground. Manuela.
I think that's the point. If you think about wilderness and walking in wilderness, there's no such thing than going in a straight line.
Yes.
This is only because we have roads.
Yes. Floorboards.
You know,
Yeah, all the rest of it. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So walk on pebbles, walk on sand, walk on mud. Yeah. Good. Okay, let's come to walking. And I thought I was going to have plenty of time with this workshop. Where does time go? So, walking, as we know, that most people are teaching, and this poor pupil who's got the knee problems, she went to a physio and she taught her to walk like this. She'd get your leg extending in front of you, do a heel strike, and she really didn't like it, so I've been teaching her to walk properly. And even Thomas Mars, his friend James Earls, does an entire analysis called Born to Walk, and this is the shape he's using. Ridiculous. You can see how there's a ground reaction force, and the back is sagging, and there's no real power in the body. So let's play with that, because this way of walking, it's quad dominant. You stand on the back foot and you bend the front knee. You're just trying this with me. And then what you do is you extend that quad. And you can feel it when you do that. When you
Now my battery's dead. Hello.
Sorry, say again? Tinica, was that you? Was that somebody who's not muted? Tinica? No, okay, good, thank you. Right. Yeah, so as I say, you stand on the back leg, you bend the front leg, you then contract that quad, and that pulls you forward. And the toe push doesn't really have to do very much, does it? Because it's the quad, then it's the extension of the kick forward of that lower leg, which gives you the heel strike. And that then powers the movement. So just walk around like that. I really find this very difficult to do now. The tummy leads rather than the head, the back sags forward, you know, the head pulls back, the glutes aren't engaged. You notice the back of the body just switches off. So the walk should come from behind. Alexander didn't teach this directly. Carrington notes that he says, although FM didn't really spell it out, you're always coming off the back foot. So what we're doing is starting with 1 foot back, and if possible rotate the foot to the new alignment and just feel that power in the ball of the big toe to stabilise or push you forward. Again, when I work with people who are feeling very unstable, and when I show them this, they go like, wow, I didn't know I had this stability. It's amazing. And from there, you can either sag and let that do that to you, or you can think up the superficial back line, fire your head to the ceiling, and let it fire your whole body forward and up. Now, you can all do that, I'm sure, but somebody with a knee problem often cannot. They won't allow themselves to lift up and off the front leg. They'll want to keep it bent. They'll want to keep it co-contracted. So, what I was doing with my pupil this morning was actually gave her a chair, and the other thing one can do is take their hands and lead them, and to encourage them to think that up thought as we power up. So just try that, just as you, with or without a chair, of course. Just think up, that front of the quad as you do this. You can take the back leg off or not, but of course when we walk we do. Just thinking that up that front of the quad. And what's that like? Try the other foot. So we're powering off from the back foot. And again, if I do it and I don't think about it, I'm aware of that knee wanting to grip. So I'm going to think up. Up. I can feel my foot relaxing down, and everything gets a lot more stable. But as I say, when you work with someone who's actually taken to walking like that, which I'm also working with somebody at the moment who's literally walking like that. He's so afraid of falling, he doesn't let his legs straighten. He hardly risks taking his feet off the ground. His arms are like here. And we're trying to re-get this movement happening. It's going to be slow work. Anyone like to comment? What's it like to think up in this context? Angela.
Their legs just feel so much more bouncy. I was just like just using the quads was just so horrible. I just couldn't even go there.
Yes,
It was
yes.
so horrible. And then it was like, oh, such a relief to find energy and springiness in the legs. Brilliant. Thanks.
Nice. Thank you. Alvina.
Really surprising, but it changes also the way the foot is used.
Doesn't it just?
Yeah,
Yes.
it's adjusted much more in line with your whole lower leg.
Okay. So you're finding it's actually bringing the alignment of the foot in.
Yeah, it does.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Really
Yes.
great.
I was certainly finding it was bringing the contact with the ground more in. Yeah. Anyone else noticed that one? Yeah. I think there's so much to discover. You noticed that, Barry. Okay. So here's another 2 pictures of me, but also look at this picture of FM walking on a beach. So talk about extension of the back leg. And again, everything is his back is lengthening and widening, his head's going forward and up. When you walk at speed, I've discovered that you cannot actually any longer keep the landing. I think he must have been going quite at speed up this hill, because when you go at speed with a good stride, the lower leg does go slightly in front of the body, but it still doesn't go into extension. You can see his lower leg still hasn't moved past vertical, and his toes, he's just landed. He's going heel ball. He's going to do our heel ball, same as we've been learning. Does that make sense? So, because you remember I said don't land on your heel, don't land on the foot altogether, but land heel ball. And I think that's exactly what he's going to do. The photographer's caught him just as the heel has landed, and the ball of the foot is going to follow a fraction of a second later. So you can see that his quads again and his hamstrings and his glutes are all really helping to extend that leg fully behind him. And that is something that most people can't do, because they don't have, apart from anything else, but not merely do they not have the power in the muscles, but they don't have the length in the muscles to get the leg back that far. Alexander not merely can get his leg that far behind him, he's still even got his heel down. That is just a remarkable amount of length, and yet he's still presumably going to bounce up off it. So the toe push is just about to come next. Such a pity we don't have a video of this moment. So let's play. So if you stand with your, let's start with the right foot back. And then you're going to let the back leg swing forward. Now, to start with, switch off your hamstrings. Unpleasant though that's going to be. Switch off your hamstrings, just let the leg swing forward. And notice that the lower leg then has this uncontrolled swing, and it all goes a bit flop still. So now, keep your hamstrings engaged, being aware that there's this leg behind, the hamstrings are engaged, the glutes are engaged, and as the leg swings forward, the hamstrings are just eccentrically controlling the swing forward, and I think that makes it much more likely that your leg will not go past vertical. So just play with that for a moment. We've got that extension of the hamstrings are engaged, they've extended the leg fully behind, quads engaged, everything's engaged, and then let that leg swing forward, and the hamstrings have now gone into their eccentric roll, and the leg is far more likely to land underneath you. Try it with the other leg. So this is just a play to start with, full extension to start with. Wake those hamstrings up, and then just feel them still engaged as you come forward. controlling, stopping that kick forward of the leg. I wonder if the it was something that came to me yesterday when I was prepping, that I think it's that the hamstrings have a real role in this. So now the front leg is landing slightly in front of the stance leg with the knee bent. And your knee, as we've been saying, has two choices. One is it can grip like fury as you then straighten up under it. And the other is that we can think up onto it. So just play with that as you take a step, being notice of whether your temptation is, as I'm walking like this, I'm slightly pulling down in the front of my knee, and I'm wanting to just co-contract it a bit. And then I'm going to change that to thinking up, 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 to the quad, to the VMO, whichever part of it you think you want to think. So just getting that sense that there's that extension of the quad. So we've got the swing forward, the bent leg, and then the quad is extending us to straight, and we're coming fully to straight, extending fully to straight. Once you've found that, take that extension further, so it's extending me to straight under me. Now if it keeps working, and the hamstrings are also extending at the back, that's when I start getting a real full power. So it's not just the hamstrings that are powering the back, that pull back of the leg that gives us the thrust. I think the quads are part of it as well. And it's a smooth continuity from landing, thinking up, 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 keep coming, keep coming, keep coming. And it powers the next, move. And then this leg turn takes over, up, 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 keep it coming up, keep it coming up. So it continues to extend the tibia behind us, taking it behind us. And then you start getting a lovely, powerful walk in which the quads are once again part of powering the walk, but they're powering it from behind now rather than powering it in front. Right, discoveries so far on this. What are people finding? Are we finding this? It's a lot of information, I know. Angela, does this make sense to you?
So honestly, it's just my tendinopathy isn't even with me now. I'm just like, hooray, thank you so much.
That's brilliant.
And what
That's brilliant.
tendinopathy, which has been
and it's miserable. Where were you feeling it? In the sit bones?
No, literally on the lateral hip.
Yeah.
Top of my glute on the right, just so painful, and it was winding up, and almost to the point it was difficult to walk and difficult to climb stairs, and it's taken a lot of thinking and directing, and but this is just brilliant, because like you were saying, because of the surgery, I think I'd lost my midline, so definitely my psoas was pulling as well. So even though I know about breathing, and of course I was, felt like I was doing all that I could in my repertoire to recover, and it was going quite well, and then it seemed to sort of backslide probably once the adrenaline had left.
Yes.
Second layer came to the fore, and I was like, wow, this hip pain is no joke.
Sure.
Yeah.
So what we've done is we've supported it from below, haven't we?
Yeah, so great. So thank you so much. Absolutely brilliant. Timing was excellent.
Brilliant. Anybody else like to comment how this is? Carol?
In thinking of coming up, keep the legs, it automatically makes your torso go up and back, so that you don't. I had this tendency of going forward and down, but there's just no thought. You can just feel it. It just goes along with the legs and brings the rest of me up too.
Yes. It takes coming up from just that bit deeper down, doesn't it? Which is lovely. Thank you. Yes, and I like the fact that it doesn't even start at the knee. It starts below the knee. I find that because if you just focus the knee, it's too sort of knee-ish, whereas focusing below the knee just gives it that that fire up. Yeah, thank you. Jill?
It definitely activates the whole leg.
Yeah.
feel like I'm using all my whole legs.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you. Anyone else want to comment? Julia, how's this for you? Is it good? Oh, Leslie.
Well, I just can't believe what I've just been experiencing, Penelope. I've been on a bit of a long recovery from a major car accident, which is now 4 years ago. And from that time, I have been what I call drunk.
Right. Yeah.
On my legs.
Yeah.
So I'm all over the place.
Sure.
That's a gross exaggeration, but it's there.
We hear it. Yeah.
And it took me a minute or two to get the timing to allow the body to do its thing when I took the stride. But I now have legs.
Wonderful.
Exactly.
That's wonderful.
I can't believe it.
Yes. Yes.
And I know that I've just been working them too.
Yeah.
So they just haven't been operating.
Yes.
In that way for that. Yes. I mean, they've been operating for all sorts of things, but yeah, that's astounding.
Yeah. Trauma switches off legs, it seems. I mean, it's interesting you say that's followed a car accident. My pupil I've described, who's really sort of ground hugging, he had a brain op. And after that brain op, he's just lost confidence to walk. His balance is all over the place. And they've checked him out neurologically. Nothing is wrong, but his whole system has just gone into fear. And that's what we're working with. And I'm just about to take somebody else on again, who, when I queued back, you know, what's going on? When did this start? Oh, it started with an operation I had a few years ago on my back. And after that, somehow I had a fear. You know, operations and car accidents, they just traumatize that midline. And then we lose the plot.
Absolutely.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's
but I can't believe, with all the work that I've been doing over the last 4 years, that has just stopped that happening.
Wow.
By working with. So I'll really work with this because
please do. And please give me an email about it in a week's time or a fortnight's time and see how it's going.
Will do.
Because, you know, I'm gathering, I'd love to gather some accounts of this for all of you who are willing to just, you know, write a quick note of what happened and what's still happening then in a week's time. Because, of course, it's not this week that it's going to be difficult. It's next week, the week after, that it's going to be the harder one to keep it going.
Yes.
But that's where the work comes, where you really make it your own and you really put it into play in the nervous system.
Yeah.
Julia?
I really felt walking from the back and the power of that and the lightness and power at the same time.
Brilliant. That's lovely. Thank you. Two more thoughts to play with as we're walking in this way, for those who've got any more brain space on it, to help your feet stay aligned, because I know a lot of people have problem. They start off beautifully aligned and then the feet sort of quietly creep out. Keep thinking about, and notice that if that happens, again, you lose the power. And for those of you with stability problems, you'll lose the stability. So rotate them back to aligned and notice there's the medial hamstrings. Again, for those of you who haven't worked with me with medial hamstrings, it's great to rub the medial hamstrings and wake them up, and the VMO as well. So just keep thinking the VMO and the medial hamstrings, and that also keeps the feet in alignment. And then another one I got from Bruce Furtman, because Alexander work very much comes out of the classical Victorian, you do not move anything from here to here, Goldie and her torso. But that's not how animal us are designed to use. And Bruce Furtman talked about the haunches, that actually the here to here is a band, and that the pelvis is actually, again, just like the thighs make a rotational movement, so the torso, the pelvis, the two hip bones are actually doing that as we walk. And so to allow that to happen, think about having a tail. So don't attach your tail to your coccyx, attach it to your sacrum. And it's not a lion tail, it's not a cat tail going up, And it's not a shamed dog tail going down either. It's a dinosaur tail. It goes straight out behind you. It's powerful, and it goes swish, swish. And as it goes, it knocks off all the coffee cups. So, and the ornaments. It's a really powerful little swishy tail behind you. So just have another go and just think about that tail going swish, swish behind you, and notice that you do a little bit of a hip. I mean, we're not doing anything obvious here. This is just a natural hip sachet that's then happening if you think about that tail. The other thing I like about bringing the legs back up to here is that this acts like a keel, because our legs are then coming up to here, but our torso is coming down to here. So this acts like the keel of a ship. It's stabilizing us as the legs are moving around here, but the keel of the ship is keeping us sort of balanced. It's putting a sort of pendular balance on it. So we've got my tail swishing side to side. My bum stays, my pelvic floor stays going down. My tail is going swish, swish behind me, knocking things off. My hamstrings and my medial hamstrings and my VMO are working, keeping my feet online. And I'm thinking up, up, up. So we're putting a lot of thoughts in here. Bruce simplifies it down to 3 directions, which is the heels are peeling off. So in other words, that leg thrust is coming from the heel peeling off. And then his second one, so peel, peel, swish, swish. And then his third one is the hands, which are doing paw, paw. And then, of course, I'm adding up, 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 up. So we've got peel, peel, swish, swish, paw, paw, and up, 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 up. So play with that as it feels nice to do and useful. Anyone like to comment on what it's like to have a tail? Jill?
I just caught sight of myself in the mirror. My bust looks enormous.
Welcome it. Hello, bum. Yes, let's all reclaim our bums. Katie Bowman has a chapter in her book, Moving Your DNA, saying, where have all the bums gone? And Esther Gokhales, does everybody know about her? She has the J-shaped spine, and she has a phrase, let your behind be behind. And because so often she said people's behinds are sort of tucked under them. The behind is supposed to be behind you, not kicked up. Lovely, thank you, Angela. Julia?
Amazing. Yeah, I really immediately felt the side to side, the whole kind of pelvis moving. First, I've never felt that before.
No, and I think, if we'd done that when we were teenagers, as I was working with an Irish woman once when we were in Ireland, and she said, she had that natural walk when she was a teenager, and her mother said, stop that, you'll have all the boys sniffing after you. I think, I don't think I would have dared to let that happen.
No, that's it.
And, now we're older women, nobody takes any notice of us. So wiggle your bum with pride.
Right.
Alison?
I think it's also interesting because the seat bones widen as you walk, and we have that whole movement of the pelvic floor, which is what the Franklin method people talk about with the pelvic floor movement. And I felt that I've been working a lot with pelvic floor recently, and I felt that really got that motion going, which was interesting. It was very subtle, but I struggled to find that sort of rotation in the pelvis, and I think I found it there.
Yes, putting a tail just makes it more obvious, doesn't it? Because it amplifies it for you.
Right.
And it is I've learned this first from the Franklin method. You're right, but this just amplifies it and lets it sort of go into the musculature in a very organic way, and it's gorgeous. It really makes one feel empowered. Yeah. So let's just keep playing. I haven't found anywhere FM teaching this account of walking that he is so obviously doing in that picture. What he normally taught was the taking a step, which is just standing on one foot and releasing one leg forward and then just letting it land, which is all very much about just not you know, doing this, doing all these other things that people do when they walk. So I think the taking a step thing, which I did sideways in the book club as well, and I did that with Miss Goldie, but I think they're doing the same thing for walking. They're keeping that whole rectangle and then just letting that smooth, the knee just float up and then land, that does in a way that doesn't disturb anything. That's your preparatory stage, and that again would be the one I would use first with pupils. But if we just stop there, we don't do enough. There's a lovely account, I think, in Marjorie Barlow, where she says, you know, FM wasn't just about non-doing. He said there was one day they were all sitting round at Penhill and somebody came in and said, the cows are in the vegetable patch. She said, he just went. Inhibition be damned. He was off to get the cows out of the vegetable patch. So keep playing. Please send me feedback on this. And whether also, have I given you too much detail? Was there too much theory in there, or was no? That's any quick feedback? Was there too much theory?
No, I found it very helpful having looked at Sam Webster before, a few hours ago.
Yeah,
and I recommend that. It'll just reinforce all of this.
Yeah, lovely. Yeah, no, there's lots up there, and I'll give you the notes as well, and my references are all in there if you want to follow them up. But as I say, they're all working very much from a standard way. But, thank you all. We're only 10 minutes late, which for me is not bad going. And enjoy the rest of your evening, day, wherever you are in the world. And,
bye, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you very much. Brilliant.
Thank you.
Just a quick one, Penelope, if you can still hear me.
Sure, absolutely.
My legs have now, I know that they have now learnt what they need to do. So when I walked a few moments ago, without having to think about what we had been doing previously to get that to happen.
Yes.
It just walked. They just happened. They worked.
So something has clicked straight back in.
Absolutely.
Well, isn't that just wonderful? Oh, yes.
The eyes.
Oh, that's marvellous. Thank you. Yes. Okay.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye,
Thank you very
everybody.
much. Mairead, you okay there?
Yes, I'm going to review it all. It's very interesting.
Good. Lovely. Thank you. Good night.
Thank you so much.
Bye now.